April gave us the thumbs up, so I think we're ready to go. We're streaming this meeting like our normal commission meetings. Would like to welcome you to this special Iron County Commission meeting this Thursday, 31st day of August, 2023. We'll begin as usual with the word of prayer, and then be offered by Wayne May, and we'll have a pledge of allegiance. Lead us in the pledge of allegiance by Bill Preston.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful that you guys get together as fellow citizens, taxpayers, and voters to listen to our elected officials discuss one of the big issues before us. Thank you for the freedoms we enjoy in our nation, for the Constitution that we'll be celebrating in a couple of weeks. And we ask you to help us to be watchful over our elected officials that they will abide by the Constitution. We ask you tonight to be patient with each other, to be open to ideas, pro and con, and to prayerfully consider the information given to us as citizens of Jesus Christ.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
My name is Paul Cousins. I'll be chairing this meeting. I'll just introduce everybody up here. So we got John Whitaker, our clerk, Cottle with Babcock Design, Commissioner Blake, myself, and then Tracy Glover is we've invited him here. He's the sheriff in King County, making the trip over. We'd like to excuse Commissioner Wilbur, mother passed today, just this afternoon. We extend our sincerest condolences to the family. So we told her to stay here in St. George and take care of family first. We'll go ahead and thank you for the pledge and prayer. We'll go ahead and just want to give some background. So we held a Iron County Commission meeting on Monday, and we apologize. We tried to get the word out the best we could on radio and social media and different postings for this meeting. It was quick. We wanted to, on Monday, we had quite a good meeting. I thought it was productive. We shared a lot of information. And in that meeting, we voted to rescind the truth and taxation resolution that we passed on August 15th. And we didn't want to turn around and do anything in that meeting. We wanted to hold a meeting in the evening where people in the county had an opportunity to attend, because Mondays, obviously, people are working and have a harder time. We do stream our meetings so people can watch it later, but we wanted to hold this one in the evening where people could attend. So we really appreciate your attendance, and hope we can just have any information will be helpful. So just the way tonight's going to go, I'll take some time first, kind of a history of how we got where we are and some of the history of what we've done so far on this jail topic. Excuse Marilyn, Rob Cottle, he's our architect for the jail. He's going to do a presentation tonight on some of the options. Lucas Little, our county auditor, will do the presentation, and then we appreciate Rex Ship, Representative Ship. He's going to talk a little bit about. There's some questions in our truth and taxation meeting. Can everybody hear back in the back? Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. He's going to talk a little bit about. There's some questions in our truth and taxation hearing about alternative options for financing, and he did some research and has some information there. And then Commissioner Blake will take some time, and then Sheriff Glover will maybe talk about experience they had in King County, and then we'll have some public comments and questions we'd love to have input from the audience. And I'll just take a minute. I'll take as long as I get in the commission meeting on it. I think we all love living in our county. That's why we're here. here. Some of us lived here our whole lives, like Commissioner White. Well, I'm a transplant from Moab. I moved here in 1980 to go to college and stay. I love it here. And I think we all love the safety and security of our community, and that's really, I think, the basis of what we're talking about is keeping our community safe. And we appreciate our sheriff and all the deputies and law enforcement and all the municipalities. And I think the bottom line to some of this discussion is what level of crime do we want to accept or tolerate in our community. This jail issue has been kicked down the road a long time, and these are very difficult decisions. They do impact people's pocketbooks, and we're very sensitive to that. But just to be real clear, this is not just an Iron County Commission problem. This is we, as the sheriff's mentioned many times, we are constitutionally mandated as a county to provide a jail, and that jail takes care of inmates that are arrested in the county by different municipalities, Cedar City, Bryan, Eddie, Parowan, wherever, and then by the unincorporated areas in the county, and they're brought to that facility. But just to give you an idea, in last year, in 2022, Iron County had 287 folks incarcerated in the jail, and Cedar City had 456. So we provide a service to, we don't charge booking fees, we provide a service to those municipalities in our county as well. I want to give a really quick history of how we got to this point. In 2019, that was the year I was elected commissioner, we got real serious about the jail. It had been talked about for about 10 years. And but we got serious that year. In the budget talks that fall, we started talking about a jail and different things. And at that time, we had about $1 million to $1.5 million excess in our budget each year. And we knew we would need a jail at some point. It was needed for some time and talked about. So we started tucking that money away into a fund, and that's grown over time. And we discussed at that time of building maybe one pot jail. Our auditor back then was Dan Jessen. He since moved on to Parowan to be the city manager. And Dan had ran the numbers, and between that $1 million and $1.5 million we tucked away in the fund, it built up, and then we added to that some COVID money that came in, and so ARPA funds and different things. And I believe that fund's grown. What was that starting? Was that fund 20 million? We eventually, what was that? About 20. And obviously we spent some of that money to fund some things. I'll talk a little bit about that. But then what happened, and he ran the numbers, and we thought we could pay the bond with that excess of the amount of money we saved. But then COVID hit, and everybody knows what happened. They printed trillions of dollars during COVID, and what happened is there's a lot of free money flowing around, but it wasn't really free because we're paying for that money in inflation today, and it was too much money chasing too few goods, and that's really hurt all of us. When that happened, there was, I think the thing that was really evident as inflation hit was law enforcement. We had the sheriff started losing deputies, lost about a fourth of his deputies in about a 10-month period, and that was very troubling. And one of the things that was a struggle, there's only so many people to go around in the state that are post-certified trained. And sheriff, you can try to say this way better, but I say, correct me if I say so wrong, but and then one of the things that kind of triggered something was the highway patrol. The state of Utah gave the highway patrol officers an $8 an hour raise, and then it was really difficult for Iron County to match that. We couldn't ever compete with that kind of an increase, and so we did give an increase to try to stop the bleeding from our, we paid post-training on these deputies that cost a lot of money, and then we were losing them to other counties, and they were benefiting from that training. And so we gave some increases, and then we implemented a step and grade plan for some of our other employees in the county, or all of our employees that had gone a long time without adequate pay increases. And so all of a sudden, we'd spent over $2 million, and that increase was gone. So that the plan we had initially was kind of off the table, trying to keep up with inflation. We initially, as I said, we looked at the single pot approach. We started seeing, but as we lost that opportunity, with the money we were saving and had excess, we started looking at other counties, Kane, for instance, and John, show that. We had some other counties that were actually building some facilities that were a little bigger than they needed and renting out the excess they were doing, inmate, contracting with state and federal government. If you look at this chart, it shows Beaver County, I think they make about $8 million. And I believe that pays for most of their sheriff's department and sheriff's department jail. And Kane, Sheriff Lovell will talk about that a little bit, about $4 million, Washington County, about 1.5, and then Barfield. You can see the numbers there. And so we've looked at that option, and we're going to talk about all the options tonight. We looked at maybe building a bigger facility. There's some demand. There's been, debate both ways, which I've appreciated in making this decision. We'll talk about it tonight. One of the things that's happened, and I hope we can get this message out better, our clerk was required when we looked at a bond, I'm going to be brutally honest, jail bonds are very difficult to get passed. If there's different bonds on the ballot, generally jail bonds are not the most popular. So we decided to do truth and taxation. The challenges to truth and taxation is, and some of the things we heard, which were legitimate concerns, was when the facilities pay off, that tax never drops off like a regular bond, and that was a real concern. And we listened to that. There was also the challenge that people didn't get a vote on, and so we did have a challenge. We had a group that was watching things close, and we missed. There's a lot of boxes to check. This is a difficult or a complicated process. We missed a box and found that to do everything right, we would have to delay the vote until next year. So we decided to regroup. Like I said, we killed the truth and taxation, and we decided to go with the jail obligation bond. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. There are some advantages to that. It's a lower interest rate. It does drop off when the building is paid for. The levy drops back down, and you as taxpayers get an opportunity to go up. So that's something that we heard loud and clear in our last meeting, and that's why we're here today. Why we're here today. One thing that I think we got to make clear is this is not a recent development. We didn't just start thinking about building a jail a year ago. Like I said, we started talking seriously in 2019, and actually for 10 years it's been just being discussed in Iron County. Is this a bad time to raise taxes and build a jail? Absolutely. There's never a good time to do things like this. It's been, like I said, kicked down the road a long time, and it's a difficult thing to do. Inflation has really hurt everybody, and we're cognizant of that. Just to give a little bit of history, and John, if you could put up that chart of the inflation chart. If you kind of look at this as I talk about days, in the spring of 2022, we found a piece of property that was located behind the Smead manufacturing facility on Highway 56. And I believe the price that we negotiated was about $27,500 an acre. And we made an offer on that property, but the public clamor from the neighbors to the west and to the north was so loud on that we held a meeting in January 14th, and we canceled that property deal. And one of the reasons we were moving as quick as possible back then is we wanted to capture this low interest rate. Well, interest rates were at an all-time low. They were at 2%. And we wanted to capture that rate. So we then found a piece of property north of the Fiddlers area. We felt like that was a suitable site, but there again, we had a lot of pushback. So we actually canceled that. We actually never did a formal offer on that property, but that was taken off the table. And then after that, there was a committee formed. On that committee was Commissioner Mike Blake, Danny Stewart, our Economic Development Director, and Cheryl Wicker, one of the residents from Fiddlers Canyon, and Steve Miller from I think it was west of our original site, Smead, that lived close by. And then I know that Mayor Green, Paul Denman, Marilyn Wood, I think attended some of those meetings as well. This committee, when it was formed, they recommended, they found a piece of property that was available over by the IFA west of Horse Alley, kind of tucked back in there, there's some real, infrastructure there. It's kind of an industrial area, and that was about, what was it? I forget the percentage, it was 33 acres. It was purchased there, and that was, so you had the Smead side was 27.5 an acre. I think the Fiddler's Name was 50, but that we paid 75,000 an acre for that property. That was, that seemed to have a decent amount of pushback as we went through this process. And so, and because it's a little island in the county, you don't need to have a conditional use permit for that facility. Just a real quick timeline, November 2020, we started looking at sites. December 2nd, 2020, Sheriff Glover was a great host and allowed us to come over to King County. There's a whole group of us that went over there and showed his facility. His beautiful facility was designed by Babcock Engineering. Yeah,
That's all right. It's on the
I'm sorry, Babcock Design. And then Layton Construction was the contractor on that facility. Beautiful facility. How many beds? 200 bed facility. And then January 5th, 2021, we toured the Cache County Jail. This was a one-plot facility designed by Babcock. And I stated money that was billed by Layton, and that was not the case. I had to correct that. May 25th, 2021, Layton Construction invited us to tour the state prison, and they were partners of Oakland on that project. May 11th, 2021, we toured the Una County Jail. That was a single plot structure built by Layton, and Babcock was the architect on that. That we heard glowing reviews from Tracy and others from these jail facilities. Real quick, just to give you a background, some have asked how did we select our contractor for this project. We hired Layton Construction to work with us on this, and this is what they call a CMGC approach. This involves hiring the contractor, and they work hand in hand with the architect to manage the project. It really helps with communication. We still use as many local subcontractors as we can, and we still get competitive bids. But that's a process used often in these large scale projects. I think we had Zwig, Hugh, Jacobson, Lake, Oakland, Big D. These are some of the big. Oh, I didn't miss anybody. These are some of the bigger contractors capable of building a project like this. We ended up, each commissioner picked someone that they wanted from the community to serve on a committee to evaluate the contractors. I selected Joe Burgess, I think Mike selected Tyler Allred, and I think Maryland selected Phil Schmidt. And these are all respected people that work in that industry, and they reviewed the proposals and ended up selecting Layton Construction. So in May of 21, we started meeting with Babcock and Layton. September of 21, we held the jail feasibility study. Most of these meetings that we've held are either public commission meetings or special meetings that we've held town halls. If you go to ironcounty.net and go to the jail section, all of those meetings are there. So if you want to go back and review what we've done, we've been very transparent. We've recorded all of our meetings. You can go back and watch it. It will take you a while. It was really good. After, let's see, February 8th, 22, we held the town hall at the Great Hall, had about 500 there that night. March 31st, we held a public hearing in Festival Hall. May 3rd, Secrecy Plan Commission meeting. That was to deal with the Fiddler's site that we were looking at. So that's kind of a real quick synopsis of where we're here and the history of what we've done. One thing we do need to realize, and you know, Rob Cottle and the sheriff and Shalon and others, I don't like names, I saw him walk in. They can talk about the condition of our jail. It's 37 years old. It's the oldest in the state. We've got some serious problems with that. So they'll discuss that a little bit. So today we're here to consider options. Some of the ones I've listed is do nothing. I don't think that's a good option. This problem is not going to go away. It's only going to get more expensive every year we wait. We can consider one pod facility, two pod facility, a remodel, and also talking about the sales tax. Revenue bond, it's a possibility. And so that's what I have to say tonight. And we can, so we'll go ahead and go to Marilyn is going to speak a little bit tonight, but obviously excuse her. Rob Cottle is going to turn come and do your presentation.
Can everybody hear me all right? Sorry about the little technical glitch there. We didn't practice the exchange of HDMI cords prior to the meeting, so next time we'll be more prepared. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. This is, I think, my 5th time in a public setting with Iron County discussing various aspects of this project. Like Paul said, it's been in discussion and design for better part of 2 years now. These projects are very complex. The functions of the jail are far more intricate and involved than most people would think. And as such, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of design consideration, and options that go into such a facility. The number one priority for all jails is safety. Safety for the officers, safety for the inmates. Unsafe jails create high liability situations, as well as put a lot of people in danger. There's a lot of litigation in the corrections world for things that happen in jails that are not up to standards. And it's very important that each county, it's important that everybody understands that each county, who's mandated by the state of Utah to staff and operate their own county jail, local inmates, they are liable for everything that happens in the jail. And so it's a facility that needs to be carefully considered in both how it's designed, but also how it operates. And when we do jail design, one of the first questions we ask the sheriff is, what's going on with your existing jail? And the reality is that in our experience in the state of Utah, with Uinta County, Sanpete County, Kane County, and with Iron County, by the time most communities bite the bullet and realize that they have no other choice but to build a new jail, the existing jail is in such a state of disrepair and non-compliance that they really don't have a choice. But nonetheless, we always evaluate the existing facility to make sure that our assumptions and what we hear about the facility are correct. So just for the benefit of the audience, I'd like to go through very quickly just an analysis that we've done of the existing facility to show why we believe, in our professional opinion, a remodel option is not feasible and is not a useful and reasonable use of taxpayer dollars. So if you'll indulge me, I'll go through this as quickly as I can. So as you're all aware, this is just a shot of the existing site. The building, basically, part of the building is the jail component. The wing to the south is the sheriff's offices. The other buildings on the site are dispatch and 911 and state buildings that share the site with the project. One of the issues with this project is it is very limited in terms of its expansion possibilities. And so we just did some initial conceptual ideation of what options could be with what's there. And that will be adding an additional housing pod in the back. And that pod would be, could potentially hold 336 beds. It also would house, thank you. So,
Jason, do you need to turn that mic on?
feel like I can
Is this one?
yeah, but, yeah. Sorry, I'm an architect, not a performer. So what we looked at was an option of, one of the needs obviously was new housing and additional housing for the current jail, just because they're completely at capacity. The bed space that they currently have is not only full, but they've had to claim other spaces that were intended for storage and recreation space and turn it into housing, which it was never designed for. These spaces, the existing housing is not in compliance with all the current standards, which creates a liability issue for the county. But more importantly, one of the key aspects of jail design is sight lines and being able to visually observe what's going on within the facility. This facility unfortunately was built almost 40 years ago, and it operates on a cold concept where all of the different housing units have their own separate and separated observation and control, which creates not only a need for more staffing, but it creates a very fragmented and broken up floor plan. There's nowhere in the floor plan of this building where you can sit at central control and look down the hall and see everything that's going on. You have things around corners. There's even cells and day rooms that, from control, you cannot see the front door of the cell and what's going on, and that's a serious issue. So we proposed this new pod, a sizable kitchen to put out that kind of quantity. So what we are showing here is that we would likely have to add on where we could, and that's what we've kind of shown here is we're adding on where we can and where it will fit additional spaces that are needed to meet the functions of all the different areas. This is your jail support area. These light blue are housing. This is new housing. Your existing programs are classrooms, spaces like that, counseling, rehabilitation, education, things that hopefully can keep everybody from coming back to jail. And so programs are very important, especially for contracted state inmates. The sheriff's office also would need to physically grow just because they're completely full. So this was an original idea, just looking at what we could do with it. Now, what we did was we summarized some of these issues, and I guess that font's actually that big. So these are some of the things that we've considered or observed. The main issue is that the infrastructure of this facility is in extremely poor condition. HVAC, plumbing, the electrical systems, everything is very outdated. Much of the equipment is obsolete and in the final stages of its useful life or well past its useful life. That creates a huge burden on the jail, especially when you're considering to deal with that many people. Like I mentioned before, the sight lines within the facility are poor, which creates a safety hazard for both inmates and officers. The facility, 37 years old, has been stated.
There is a lot of water damage. The roof is clearly in poor shape, and you can always re-roof a building. The bad news about water damage is, from what we've observed, it's throughout the facility, it's significant, and it's something that, the thing that concerns us is what we can't see. Water is probably the worst thing you can have come into your building in terms of something that will cause you a lot of damage and problems. The big challenge with this facility is they currently have about 100, I think Shalon told me today there's about 160 inmates. Is that correct, Shalon? You can't shut this facility down, ship off 160 inmates, and do this remodel. You have to figure out a way to do this while your inmates are in the jail, and the jail has to remain operational. Now, in order to do that, you have to phase it such that the jail would have to be, you could put people in half the jail while you remodel one half and then switch it and so on. That is extremely problematic with an inmate population. The analogy I would use would be, it would be like trying to remodel your kitchen during Thanksgiving dinner when your whole family is there. It's a very complex and difficult thing to do. It adds to the construction duration. It adds to the cost, and it potentially would add more staffing issues and burden to the sheriff's office, which would be another cost that would be borne by such an exercise. The floor plan, as it stands, to solve a lot of these security issues would need significant reconfiguration, which would require basically demolition down to the bare structure. For those of you that may not be aware, correctional buildings, these are solid grouted concrete block walls or concrete walls. You don't just knock them down with a sledgehammer. You have to saw them, cut them, jackhammer them out. It's very messy. It's very difficult, and it's very challenging and hard construction. The other issue is the site is currently landlocked. The diagram I just showed you, we think we can squeeze a few things on there, namely one pod, but beyond that, there is nowhere else to go with this facility. And I think one of the other things that's of concern is in a remodel scenario, functions can only go where they'll fit, not really where they should be. And if we take that strategy, that doesn't solve the problems that are inherent with the current jail. If you're going to spend the amount of money that would be required to do such a remodel, you really would want a floor plan and a flow and sight lines that solved all of your safety and operational problems. But because of the way the jail is arranged and the fact that we could not move certain functions, you'd be stuck with what you have, and you'd basically be putting a multi-million-dollar Band-Aid on something that is still bears a lot of the same problems. Probably the issue that would concern me the most is the current building. Once we go into such a substantial remodel, we're then bound by the law to upgrade it to all of the current codes and standards. Right now, jail is grandfathered in because of its age, and the state and the federal government gives some consideration for that. But once you do a major remodel like this, you now have to bring it up to code. It is not in compliance with the 2021 International Building Code, the International Mechanical Code, the Fire Code, the Energy Conservation Code, which is a relatively new one. But the biggest one, the most dangerous one, is it does not meet ADA. And it also does not comply. None of the existing housing right now complies with the American Correctional Association standards, which are understate how challenging it is to take a building of this scale and this function and to bring it all up to code, and the amount of cost that it would take to do this. You would be much better off knocking the facility down and rebuilding it, or putting it on a completely different site. This building would cost, for this remodel, would cost at least as much a square foot as the new facility, but likely 15 to 25% higher because it is a remodel. The structural frame also likely does not meet current seismic and wind codes. A jail is what's known in the code, the building code, as an essential facility. Essential facilities are facilities like police stations, jails, hospitals, schools, and what an essential facility is required to do in the code is there's a factor of safety that's another 50% higher than the regular factor of safety. So the structure in an essential facility basically has to be designed to not only withstand a seismic or big wind event, but it has to be completely functional. The way existing building codes work right now, when you hear earthquake codes, all buildings are designed to a seismic code, but the code that it's designed to for regular buildings is just that the building will not fall down and kill you. It does not say that the building will be functional afterwards. An essential facility mandates that, which means the structure has to be much more robust, and all of the structural considerations for the building have to reflect that. And like I said before, in this instance where you have to take the building down to its bare bones, you literally have to be checking and likely reinforcing every connection of every beam and column and all the major structural elements of this building to meet that requirement. The mechanical, electrical, plumbing, like I said, the short answer is it's a mess. You have corroded pipes, cast iron pipes that are completely split and rotted away. The current sewer system is not able to deal with the amount of sewage that the jail generates in its current form, let alone what would happen if you added another 300 beds to it on this site. What that means downstream in terms of what it would take to upgrade the infrastructure of the sewer to accommodate that, I can't say that. We didn't study that aspect, but it would likely go a considerable distance from the jail out into the main infrastructure, which is another cost that would have to be accounted for. We don't know if there's asbestos in this facility. It's very possible that there's some asbestos, especially in a lot of the tape that's used in older ductwork has asbestos in it, which requires full abatement, which is a very expensive task in and of itself. It would require a complete removal and upgrade of all the HVAC, all the plumbing, and all the electrical system to bring it up to code. There's a lot of bare wires that have frayed and arced, and it's, like I said, it's a mess. The security issues, like I mentioned, the sight lines, that's your prime concern in a facility like this. All of the current existing detention cells and day rooms for the inmates have 37-year-old detention hardware, which is obsolete, and it's our understanding that Mike Gibbs has had to even get onto eBay to find parts for these detention locks. It's easy to replace the detention hardware. It's just really expensive. Detention locks are thousands of dollars per lock. And if you're going to go to the trouble of adding an additional pod to this jail, conclusion, and this is my professional opinion, this facility is at the end of its useful lifespan. Can you remodel it? Yes, you can. Can you remodel it to the level that it needs to be done to be a correctional facility, a county jail that meets all of the standards that lists a large amount of the liability from Iron County? You can technically. In our opinion, it's not feasible from a cost perspective. And we would, if as an architect, if Paul was to ask us to design this, we would do the best we could to help him out, but we would recommend from the start and all the way through the project that this is not a good way to spend your money, because it does not solve your problems long term. The new jail site does give you a lot of advantages in that there's room to grow. It's not up against the neighborhoods, and it solves all of these infrastructure problems for you. If you'll just indulge me, these are just a couple of photos. I know you've seen a lot of these. These are what Shalon provided for me of a lot of the decaying infrastructure in building, corroded pipes, bare wire floods. The building floods regularly. It just did last week, I believe. And really what the county, if the county's going to commit the amount of funding that's required for a facility like this, it's a much better solution to abandon the existing building, use it while the new facility is being constructed so that you're not incurring additional cost, trying to farm out inmates for 2 years, and build a new facility, and then either repurpose or sell the land that the current building is on and gain those advantages. Very quickly, I wanted to just show you a very high-level overview of the design that we are currently working on. And this is a podular design. Basically, these are housing pods, and as you can see, the best analogy I could use, they're like a pie or a pizza, where you look down, and each of these wedges is a day room. And a day room, these are 24 beds each, and what it does is it gives the sheriff and the jail commander the ability to segregate inmates. I know most people probably think that when you go to jail, just everybody goes to jail, and it's just everybody's all there together. That's not how it works. There are different classifications of inmates. You need to separate certain inmates from other inmates for gang affiliation reasons, for difference in violence and the type of offenses that they've committed, and so on. And in order to do that, you have to create different compartments and different areas for the jail commander to be able to manage both males and females, as well as the different populations. The way that the advantage of this is really about sightlines. Central control is right here, almost in the geographic center of the building, and the red lines indicate the sightlines that you can see from central control. One person working in central control has complete line of sight for the entire corridor down to each pod. And then when you get into the pods, the pod has a central control room that has direct observation of everything that's going on in the pod. I'll let Sheriff Glover talk about this when he talks, but you can manage and watch a large number of inmates in pod control with 2 people in pod control, officers roving the floor, and there are no blind spots. Every cell door faces control, so the controller sees everything that's going on the mezzanine, everything that's going on in every one of the day rooms, everything that's going on in the cells, any of current segregation that we have. So in one pod right now, we have some program space, and the approach we're trying to do here is we're trying to reduce the number of inmate movements during basically the course of an inmate's day within the jail. Every time you move an inmate, that requires an officer to conduct that movement or to facilitate that movement, which is a task that takes away from that officer's time. The fewer movements you can make, and the more centralized you can make the functions, and the shorter distance between functions means a more efficient facility, both for your officers, but it's a safety factor too. People do not escape from these facilities, despite what Jack Bauer on 24 would lead you to believe. My wife gets angry at me because when we watch those shows, I point out very quickly how that's not true, and she gets mad that I've ruined it for her. But the reality is that you do not escape one of these facilities unless you have help, because there is nowhere to go in these facilities. Doors are interlocked, which means when one door opens, the other one stays closed. And what that means for the safety of inmates and officers is that escapes and problems happen during transports. And so taking an inmate to court, taking them to the hospital, having to take them to one end of the facility to the other, that's when the inmate has an opportunity potentially to harm him or herself or the officer. If you can self-contain a lot of these functions in the pod, which is the approach we're taking, it eliminates a lot of these movements. So all of the program space is in the pod. The medical bay is in the pod. The visitation, video visitation, happens in the same day room. The inmate does not even leave the day room for their own visitation. And what that does is it conserves manpower for the sheriff's office and the jail commander to manage the inmates, but it also significantly improves the safety of such a facility. This facility, as it's designed right now, actually has less square feet in it in the jail part than the existing jail does, and it accommodates 150-ish or more inmates, even if you add a second pod to the existing jail. And it does it in a manner that gives the sheriff and jail commander in Iron County a maximum amount of flexibility for both county inmates, but also state and federal contract inmates. And we have empirical evidence from other jails that we designed that the sheriffs have raved about their efficiency and the way they've worked with their staff and how much easier it makes their job to manage these inmates. I think that's it. Thank you for listening to me. I'd be happy to answer some questions later.
Save your questions for later.
Hey Jason, can we activate, is number 7 on? Black, I think.
Okay, so I just wanted to talk about what's changed since our last public meeting. We're going a different route, and I want to give a little background on that, and then also compare the 1 pod versus 2 pods. You just kind of saw layout from Rob and how those work. So when we first started talking about this and financing the jail, we were going to do the truth and taxation route, which would increase the general fund levy right here. So on an average home of $405,000, that would have increased by $185.49 per year. And this would have stayed as long, forever basically. It was a permanent increase unless the jail was paid off in the future, and then a future commission was going to lower it in the future. So that's what the previous route was. Now we're going with a GO bond election, a general obligation bond. And how that works is it'll create a different line item on your taxes. And with a one-pot option, that would increase your taxes on the same $405,000 home by $119 per year, or $9.92 per month. So looking at, and that is a 30-year bond, and that is at 4.61% interest. And that's going to be the same terms for one pod versus a two pod, those terms on that. So the pros and cons of a one pod, look at that. So it is a smaller tax increase now. We get the facility built, established, which is the main goal here. And then if we keep our current number of inmates, we don't get any more inmates, we would not need to increase staff. So there wouldn't be another, big tax increase for staff, because we're gonna have the same number of staff, same number of inmates, just a new building. But there would be room to house another 100 to 150 inmates, contract inmates, depending on our number of county inmates at the time. With housing those inmates, it would bring in $1.9 million to $3.5 million in revenue. And then if we look at the cons, if we did have those entire 150 contract inmates and the whole pod was completely full, we would need an additional 17 employees for that one pod, which would cost about $2 million in wages. And that's a really high estimate. So with that $2 million in wages, but we would be on the higher end of $3.5 million in revenue, and we are looking to have our rate increase per day for federal inmates. That's a really conservative estimate. The $3.5 million could be higher than that, but that would leave us with our additional operating costs and wages and our increase in revenue. It would leave us $1 million, $1.5 million, increase with having that pod full, and that could go towards saving up for a second pod, or offsetting the money in our general fund that the jail already loses. Another con is there will be a larger future tax increase for a second pod, that may be 10 to 15 years down the road, maybe more, maybe less, when that time comes. If, say it is 10 years down the road, then there could be a tax increase of $70 to $100 per home to build that second pod. We wouldn't have any extra funds to pay it off early, and then, like I said, a little bit of money left over to save for future projects. So yeah, that's the situation with one pod. If we go to the two pod option, then it would increase the average home $153 per year, or $12.75 per month. Like I said, it's the same terms for the bond. The pros of having two pods is there's plenty of room for future growth. We would lock in the construction cost at today's prices. The capacity would go up to 370 to 415 contract inmates, which would bring in around 7 to 10.5 million in revenue. That would give us the ability to pay off the bond earlier, and then provide revenue for future projects and have less tax increases. cons of 2 pods is it is a larger tax increase now. And if we did have both pods completely full, you know, say we have these 415 contract inmates, both pods are completely full inmates, we would need 42 more employees, which would take about $5 million in wages. It's a really high estimate, but that would leave $2 to $5 million in profit above those wages. And so just to show that this is, you know, reality, it's not something, you know, we've kind of dreamed about being able to make some money or more money on contract inmates. Because people have brought up the idea of, you know, other sources of revenue. What other sources can we have? They brought up sales tax. That's not an option for us right now. Any other source of revenue, like grants, we've looked at a loan from the CIB, which is a lower interest rate, or a grant from them. They don't have any money. So this is, you know, our main source of generating more revenue that we can control. If you look at our neighboring counties, Paul showed this a little bit and talked about it, but in 2022, just from state inmates, we made a little over $200,000, while our neighboring counties are making, you know, a lot more money than us. They have the bed space for that, and the revenue from those inmates is offsetting their general fund and their taxpayers' revenue, or their taxpayers' money. So just comparing Beaver County to Iron County, Beaver County is kind of the gold standard in this throughout the state. They make a lot of money on their jail. You can see our total jail expenses are $5.3 million. Theirs are almost $6.3 million, so pretty similar. But they make over $8 million. This was in 2021, and they had a profit, you know, in their jail of $1.8 million, which went back into their general fund. In 2021, Iron County, our general fund subsidized our jail by $3.7 million. So just, I want to show how that is an option, is a reality that, you know, we could take advantage of. And then just to summarize, 1 pod versus 2 pod, the difference would be $34 a year, $2.83 per month. That's kind of an outline of the facility. So, thank you.
Thanks, Luke. As I mentioned, there was some questions in our last public hearing about alternative sources of revenue, and Rex Shep, our representative, agreed to come and talk about some of the investigation he's done on that.
Okay, I'm Representative Shep. I'm your state representative for at least part of Iron County. Representative Ulrich is not here today. Actually, Representative Ulrich's quite sick, and we're hoping he gets better real soon. When this all came up, I checked with the state tax commission to see if there was an option that could be considered for sales tax instead of what's being considered on the property tax side. Certainly the value and the benefit of sales tax on this is that our visitors to Iron County help us pay for costs. So I'd rather see that be on the burden of people that travel here from out of the county to help us pay our costs. So in order to do that, and I've actually opened a bill file to do this if we want to move forward with it. I've talked quite extensively to the State Tax Commission about it, how it would need to work. So we could pass, we could earmark a tax increase for any county that's 3rd through 6th class counties. So we don't want this to focus on the bigger counties, but Iron County is a 3rd class county, so we certainly wanted to include that. But what it would be an earmark for, you could have a sales tax of up to 1% that would for the purpose of building a county jail. So it would be earmarked only for a county jail this increase could be for. I did some evaluation on it with the state tax committee. They said based on the sales that took place in 2022 in Iron County, if we only did a 0.25% increase, and of course that's going to be certainly up to the commission if you decided to do this if it passes, 0.25% increase on $1.4 billion of sales in Iron County would generate about $3.6 million a year. And I don't know exactly utter little how that would work and what the costs are going to be, but that would be a way of generating a lot of funds. This would be a voter-approved tax increase. So the way the bill would have to go is, of course, the state legislature would have to pass it. Then, if the county decided, the commissioners decided they wanted to instigate of course, we'd want to keep our taxes less than our neighboring St. George, so our people don't want to go down there to buy their stuff. That's where this 0.25% would keep us below that. It might even be more than that. But if they decided to do that, it would have to go to the voters, so that they could put it on the ballot. So the citizens of the county would have to vote that they're okay with this increase in taxes. It would be for the purpose of a county jail only. So anyway, that's a proposal that's considered. I'm planning to run the bill. It would certainly be up to you citizens if it passes the legislature and it's available to the county for you to okay it to happen. So that's all I have to say. If there's any questions on that.
Turn time over to Commissioner Blake for his comments and introductions.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out. I wanted to give just a couple of minutes of a little bit of history. Commissioner Cousins kind of gave the history once he came onto the commission in 2018. I've been on the commission. I was elected in 2016. In fact, Sheriff Mark Gower was our sheriff when I came onto the commission in 2016. But just a little bit about my background. I've served as a law enforcement officer here in Iron County since 1996. I spent a couple of years with the Iron County Sheriff's Office. Then I went to the Cedar City Police Department. The bulk of my career, over 20 years, was at the Cedar City Police Department. The majority of that was in major crimes, child abuse, sexual abuse, and dead body investigation. I've also, I left full-time law enforcement in 2018. Currently work part-time as an investigator and patrol guy for the Enoch City Police Department. I've been in that capacity for about 4.5 years. My other part-time gigs is with the Office of the Medical Examiner for the state of Utah as a medical legal death investigator here in Iron County. And I give that history for a purpose. I'll talk about it in just a second. In 2016, as I came into office, I've had the opportunity to spend hours and hours in every part of the Iron County Jail for the last 28 years. I've seen the jail deteriorate kind of before my eyes in that amount of time. In 2016, when I was elected, Sheriff Gower said, hey, look, now that we've got a commissioner that understands the needs of our corrections needs, our needs for a new jail, man, we've got to start talking about it. So we've been talking kind of until we're blue in the face, and it's fallen on deaf ears. But you're going to understand, so we really need to start this conversation. And so we started talking about a new jail, what we would need to do to get a new jail. Dan Jessen was mentioned earlier. Dan is going to be here tonight. Dan's father passed away recently, and he was helping on the family farm this afternoon and blew a hose on the tractor and didn't wasn't able to be here tonight because he's fixing farm equipment down in New Harmony. Dan came on in 2016 as well as our Iron County auditor. At that time, as he analyzed the budget, our books and everything else, realized that we had a pretty good fund balance. And Paul talked a little bit about that fund balance. We had a surplus in our operating costs from year to year. How it works is counties can't just bank all the money that they want. Entities in general, cities, counties, the state, we're not allowed by law to have unlimited funds in our fund balance. And we were starting to push up against the ceilings of our allowed fund balance. So if we surpass that allowed fund balance, then we don't have to give away the money, but we do have to pay fines and other things. We do have to show a plan to drop below that fund balance. In our conversation with we need a new jail at that point, in about 2016, 2017, Dan Jessen came and he said, hey, look, we're bumping up against our fund balance parameters. We can, if we earmark that money to a capital project, we can continue to save that money, but we can't just save it in the general fund. It has to be specifically earmarked for a capital project. And the jail is the capital project that we need. And it is the commission, Commissioner Adams at the time, Commissioner Brinkerhoff, we all agreed to that. Yet we need to move towards a new jail. So let's start moving that additional fund balance and dedicate it towards the jail. And we were able to set aside about $2 million a year-ish. And I wish Dan was here, but about $2 million a year we were able to start to stick away for a jail. COVID hit. Commissioner Cousins talked about different funding and problems there. Well, the county said the government started to print money and they started to hand it out. And we in Iron County were eligible for millions of dollars of those ARPA funds, and it's really complicated. Those had to go to specific things. But about $10 million of those ARPA funds came and were eligible to put aside for a capital project. So, long story short. So we were able to stick about $10 million of those ARPA funds away, along with the other money that we had saved, for a total of about $20 million in our savings account, specifically earmarked for the new jail. When Commissioner Cousins came in 2018, again, Commissioner Adams and I caught him up. We got 19. Okay, Commissioner Cousins came in 2019. We got him caught up. He soon realized the need for a new jail, and we started to plan towards that and look at funding options for that new jail. Commissioner Cousins gave a good he gave a good history there. The moral of this story is we were able to set aside about $20 million when we started this project in earnest a couple of years ago with Layton Construction and Babcock Design. That $20 million has gone to purchase the land for cash payment. We own the land outright for the new site. We've been able to pay our architecture fees, our pre-construction fees, soils engineering, all of those things pre-construction wise are not part of what we're asking to bond for the facility. That we've been able to pay cash for those services up front for money that we were able, out of that $20 million. So far, we've spent around $2 million of that with property and with other things. I know, and I heard from several sources that we had a lot of money and it was squandered. We had $20 million. We still have $18 million. Every penny of that has been accounted for and gone towards the new jail project. When we landed on the property where we are now, that's down right in the industrial park off of Airport Road. When we found that, we had a committee that looked at that property, identified that as a good place. And when it came time to purchase that property, we analyzed it as a county. There was kind of a committee within the county of myself, the auditor, and the assessor. What we paid for that property was well under fair market value. We really got it for quite a good deal for commercial property in an industrial area with all of the infrastructure basically on the property. We saved millions of dollars on this piece of property from what we would have had to put in infrastructure at the North Main property. I just want to talk a little bit about kind of reiterate a couple of things that Luke just talked about. As we talk about funding the jail with contract inmates, and this is, we've gone over and over and over this. This isn't a pie in the sky idea. This is business as usual here in the state of Utah. In fact, our original jail that we're in now was paid off by housing federal inmates. We've housed both state and federal inmates from the time that our jail was opened back in 1987, and still continue to house state and federal inmates to this day. It's not a new concept. That's how we paid off the jail that we're in now. As you can see, the chart that was up there, we took in about $200,000 last year. Out of the general fund, we subsidized the sheriff's department and the county jail with about $3.7 million from the general fund. That's how jails and sheriff's offices work. They don't generate money. Public safety is one of the number one, if not the number one, responsibility of government. We have to have it, but they're not a money maker. We do have the opportunity. When we look at the model of one pod versus two, we have the opportunity to build a one pod jail. That's going to be a payment that's made by the bond for 30 years. We have very little opportunity to pay off early. We have very little opportunity to supplement the income of the rest of the county. Beaver County made $8 million. That's about their contract fee, $8 million. 1.8, that runs their entire sheriff's department, pays for their entire sheriff's department, entire jail, and puts $1.8 million back into the general fund of the county for other projects. That $1.8 million is actually more than what they collect in property tax in Beaver County. Beaver County would absolutely not be able to function without the model that they have with those contract inmates. I'm going to let Sheriff Glover talk about Kane County, but this is really the model of how this is done, how these projects are financed in the state of Utah. It's a proven model that's worked for us in Iron County. The difference between a two-pod jail and a one-pod jail that gives us the ability to grow is $2.83 per month per average household, per average property owner in Iron County. Construction costs don't go down. They fluctuate. I've had many conversations with our contractor, especially commercial projects. Things level out and things do a little bit, but they don't drop drastically. Lumber may go down, but steel, lumber, gypsum, whatever, don't all fall at the same time. We're not going to see a significant decrease in construction materials. Talking to our economists, folks, interest rates, a lot of people say interest rates may drop with maybe a possibility of a new administration. Man, I hope that's true. But the Fed is going to, in the opinion of our financial folks, that interest rate's not going to plummet seriously, because that interest rate is what's what is the tool that they're using to try and control the inflation. The interest rate bottoms out again, and we're going to see inflation go through the roof. This is a project that we have to complete. This isn't a want. This is a need. This is something that we have to do constitutionally to provide for the safety of our citizens in Iron County. It's been arduous, to say the least, to work on this project, but I can tell you that we have spent literally hundreds of hours as a commission, as a sheriff, as a finance department, with Mr. Cottle. We've gotten to be great friends because we have literally spent hundreds of hours together, both in person and online. Very pleased with the team that we've assembled, and you know, as much as this is unpleasant for us, I don't want to pay an extra bond. I don't want my taxes to go up. But we're really up against the wall as far as the need for this facility. It's no longer a want. It's not a luxury. We're at critical mass. I really appreciate the input. I appreciate folks taking the time to come out and listen to the information. I thank you very much. I'm going to turn the time over to Sheriff Glover from King County.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can everybody hear me okay? I appreciate the invitation to come over here today. My name is Tracy Glover. I'm the Kane County Sheriff. I have a little bit of experience in this jail space, and I'll kind of go through that. I didn't really come armed with a presentation. In fact, I've learned a lot about the program that's kind of being laid out here in Iron County tonight. I did have the good fortune of having a number of elected officials and others come over and take a look at my jail several months ago, a year ago, whatever it was. And we were able to walk through and talk about some things there. But I'll take you all the way back to the mid-90s. I think most of you, not calling you old, but most of you look like you remember the mid-90s. Kane County, I was not in law enforcement at the time. Kane County kind of came out with a presentation to build a new jail. And it was sold kind of as a form of economic development at the time. There was a developer that had some land and was willing to donate it if the county would put in the jail, and therefore the related infrastructure, sewer lagoons and whatnot. And it went over like a lead balloon in the community. And I was one that was opposed to it. And my family was opposed to it. It just didn't seem like a good idea at the time, and we were opposed to it. Fast forward 1997, I got into law enforcement, started to understand a little bit about how things work, and then in 2000, so just 3 years later, I was contacted by the county sheriff, who I didn't know that well at the time, who asked me to serve as his undersheriff and be appointed as his undersheriff. And I had a couple conditions when I took that job, one of which was he was pretty bitter about the process of that jail kind of falling through. And I said, I won't come to work for you if we're going to push the jail agenda. In fact, from here on out, if I'm going to come to work here, we're going to refer to the jail as the J word. And we had kind of a disagreement about that, but that's how we moved forward. I started working for the Kane County Sheriff's Office in 2000. And progressively over the next 5 or 6 years, our jail started to get overcrowded. And soon enough, I came to work one morning. We had an in custody death, a hanging that was very unfortunate, hard on our staff, and difficult. And then I came to work one morning, probably in about 2006, and we had 2 women's beds, and we had 9 women in that section, 7 of which were sleeping on the floor, 2 of which were pregnant. And I just walked out of there, and I thought, I have to sound the alarm. This is a huge problem. Our facility's outdated. It was built in 1980. We still don't have the space. The facility's dilapidated, but I mean, we are at risk here. So I did. I took pictures. I presented them to the county commissioners, and same thing. The county commissioners were like, "Oh man, nobody wants a legacy of building a jail, really, when it comes down to it." And so, but we embarked on this process of trying to look at what our options were. And I bring all that history up because with my background and being a the first jail proposal, I was a proponent of the smallest facility possible. I wanted to build like a 40 bed, and some people said, well, what about growth? Okay, well, maybe a 60 bed jail then, let's look at that. I didn't want a lot more staff. I liked the size of our department. I didn't want all the headaches that come with that. And I knew all of my staff members, and I knew all of their kids' names, and that was nice. I liked that. And so fast forward, we started looking around. We started looking at facilities, and what became apparent as we looked at, for example, specifically, Beaver County, who at the time had just added on their second section, but we weren't looking at that. We were looking at their first section, their first housing unit, which was about 200 beds. And then we contrasted that against Garfield County, who was housing they have about a 100-bed jail, just under a 100-bed jail. And I started putting a pencil to paper, and really quickly I could see that Beaver County only had about 4 or 5 more staff members than Garfield County had. Yet they were generating more than twice as much revenue with contract inmates. And I'm like, well, that's crazy. And so the efficiency started to become a real part of the equation. Similar to this, I am just now realizing that I still have emotional damage from the process, but we had meetings in an auditorium not unlike this one. And the community was very concerned, and rightfully so. The questions became, how does it affect my life? Are you elected officials being efficient with my money? And what does it cost? And those kind of became the primary questions. And so we started to try to answer those questions, and our Taxpayers Association got pretty involved, and they were pretty against the project. And I requested some meetings with them, and we sat down and we talked about it. We showed them our facility. They finally kind of agreed that, yeah, we have to do something. There's no question about that. And to their credit, they went to neighboring communities. They went to Beaver County. They went to Garfield County, to Panguitch. And they went door to door, business to business, and they started, they drafted up some surveys, and they went and started asking questions to these folks in the communities and said, how has this impacted your life? And has it been positive or negative, and why? And they started to discover some things that were helpful in the process. And most of the people were very much in favor of the model. And so they started to kind of get behind the project. And in fact, they held their own meetings, and they did some of their own survey work in the community. And as we started to present these same kinds of things, the community members chose to mitigate their tax burden by building a larger facility, taking on a little more risk, no question about it, but building a little larger facility, larger than we need in Kane County, at 200 beds, but creating an efficiency where the staff, there's 3 major costs in a jail. The bond payment, or in my jail at least, the bond payment, well, in order, it would be the staff costs, the bond payment, and the food. You do have to feed these inmates. So those are the 3 major costs. Everything else is relatively mild in the grand scheme of things. And so we started to look at how do we mitigate the tax burden on our community, and try to be as efficient as we possibly can. And so we started to look at jail designs, and ended up getting involved with Rob Cottle, who has become a very trusted advisor. Rob's never tried to sell me anything I didn't want, and when I've pushed back on certain designs and tried to take advantage of different kinds of value engineering and ways we could save money, he's very open to those things, and I trust Rob 100%. But Rob helped to develop a design that is very efficient. So as we looked at jails across the country, really, it became apparent that this wagon wheel design that you saw on the screen a little bit ago creates a situation where you don't have to move inmates very often, and your staff members can cover the area from what we call the horseshoe, kind of that center area of those housing units, without having, a large staff to inmate ratio. And so the staff costs started to drive down, as compared to certain other kinds of housing units, like dormitory housing units that are direct supervision. The staff costs started to go down. We've tried to be innovative with solutions for funding, much like you're doing here, although we weren't as smart as you apparently, because we hadn't thought of sales tax and saving COVID money over time. I mean, not that I'm a fan of COVID money in general at all, but if you're going to get it, that's a good place to use it. So these guys have done a good job with that. I'm learning tonight. What we did is we went to the USDA Rural Development and we got 3 loans. We got a $1 million loan. They will only do loans in $10 million increments. So we got a $10 million loan, we got a $1 million loan, and then we got a $7.5 million loan from CIB. And to date, we've been able to pay off our USDA Rural Development loans in full. We built our jail and moved in the fall of 2011, so we've been open for about 12 years. We've been able to pay off both of our USDA Rural Development loans, and we've chosen not to pay off our CIB loan because the interest is so low on that loan, it'd be counterproductive for us to pay that off. Besides, there are some benefits to having some bonds on your facility with jail contracting, et cetera. And so some of the complicating factors that came up in our discussions that I'll just mention briefly, and then I'll just answer questions that people have if the commissioners would like me to. But a lot of people were concerned about inmates, families moving to the community and being somehow undesirable. We just haven't experienced that at all. It was a concern I had, to be honest, at the time. Technology's developed since then to a point that, I mean, families wouldn't travel to visit their inmates anyway. They literally look at a tablet and they basically Skype with their family from their jail cell now. And it's a good way to go. It's an efficient way to do it. It's inexpensive. I think we charge like $20 a visit or something like that because we have to monitor every visit with manpower. So it does take, it does cost money to do it. But it saves people a lot of money in travel. We house, currently we house, my jail probably has 180, 190 inmates in it today, if I had to guess. 166 of those are Utah Department of Corrections inmates that we contract. We're the second largest contract facility in the state, second to Beaver County. If you look at Beaver County's numbers, they quote-unquote make money on their jail facility, or it offsets some of their budget, some of their general fund budget. In my case, I try to break even. I literally try to run it like a business. The county, Kane County, when we build our facility, the general fund cost to operate the jail about $500,000, which is crazy, sounds crazy nowadays, but they still dump that same $500,000 or transfer it from the general fund into our jail fund, just because they would have been paying that money anyway. It's not gone up in the 12 years we've been in that facility. That transfer from the general fund or property tax money, if you want to look at it that way, that's not gone up. It stayed at $500,000. We've never asked for any more money from the county. And the rest of the costs of the facility, including the bond payment, have basically broke even. There's been years we've been in the red a little bit, there's been years we've been in the black a little bit, but overall, over the course of the 12 years, we've generated about $2 million in fund balance over that period of time that we carry kind of for a rainy day. So that's how we do it. If you look at it, as the blue chart showed, they have to augment their jail budget by a percentage. And then, of course, you guys, Iron County, are augmenting your jail budget significantly, $3-4 million a year. So that's kind of the scale of what you're looking at. I just say a quick word about the state of jail contracting in the state of Utah. So I co-chair the Joint Jails Committee for UAC, the Utah Association of Counties, with Leland Pollock from Garfield County, Commissioner from over there chairs it, and I'm his co-chair. And so we've been able to work pretty consistently on jail contracting issues. It hasn't been easy. I'll be the first to tell you that over the 12 years that I've been significantly involved in the jail contracting process, it hasn't been easy. The main reason it hasn't been easy is because every year we found ourselves at the legislature begging for a $1 increase or a $2 increase to the jail rate, the contract rate. We made some significant improvements over time. Our satellite Department of Corrections sites or county jails that are under contract are really good at doing certain things. Like I house sex offenders that require substance abuse treatment. So that's the way they're programmed. When they got incarcerated, it was discovered that they committed a sex crime, but they also have a substance abuse problem or addiction that may have contributed to that. So I house that demographic of inmate, kind of that narrow scope of inmate. And we program those inmates, we treat them. My entire facility is like a therapeutic community, basically, and that's the way we like to look at it. We like to create a culture of treatment, if you will. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I won't get into all the psychology behind it or why it's beneficial, other than we're good at it. And it helps people, and it helps families, and it helps my staff to be safer in that environment. And so that's why we do that. But what I wanted to mention quickly is that we went and argued for $1 a day or for $2 a day, and it got quite contentious with the legislature and the sheriffs and the county commissioners. And so we've been working on a fix for that. And we've worked really hard on it, actually. It's taken a lot of effort, a lot of ingenuity by legislators that were willing to kind of go out on a limb and work hard for it. But what we came up with this last session, and it's going to be a big benefit, is instead of programming an inmate under contract at a bed rate, we put it on a sliding scale. So the Department of Corrections will establish a daily rate every single year. And a number of factors, you can look at the legislation, but a number of factors go into that establishment of that daily rate. Personnel costs and transportation costs and medical costs and all those kind of things dump into that to create that daily rate. And what the legislation that we got passed last year with great support from the legislature was that we will get paid at a percentage of that, we the counties will get paid at a percentage of that rate every year. And it's on a 3-year average. So they'll take a 3-year average of the rate that the state establishes, and then they'll pay us a fluctuating rate based on that. The reason that's important is because with the state of inflation that we're dealing with now, we would go broke if we were up at the legislature begging for $1. There's just no way we can keep up, right? I mean, as was mentioned before, the Highway Patrol does an $8 an hour increase. How do we keep up with that? Well, in this scenario now, as of this last year, those rates will follow inflation. So if the Department of Corrections spends more money on their operation, on a 3-year average, our rate will go up accordingly. And so we're not at the doors, banging on the doors, asking for $1 every year and pissing everybody off and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be a lot better process. It's a good piece of legislation, and we worked hard on it. The other thing I quickly mentioned, I find myself in a lot of meetings about corrections reform and things like that. I was at the legislature or at the Capitol on Monday, meeting with a group of senators and representatives about this issue, and they are really concerned about the fact that they have limited space at the Utah State Prison. They just built a new prison, but it's smaller than their old prison, and mostly they're having just a really difficult time hiring staff and opening up all the sections of their prison. They need bed space right now. A good way to mitigate those staffing issues is to spread them out across the state, sometimes in Kane County at least. One of the biggest benefits of us building our jail is that I've been able to hire about 30 local kids that wanted to live there, had a hard time finding a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year job with benefits, and now they have that and they're able to live there. And what I didn't hear in the presentations that I would just quickly mention is that when you're talking about $5 million in payroll or $10 million in payroll, whatever it is, that payroll, those dollars transfer directly into your community. If you want to talk to my restaurant owners or my gas station owners or my grocery store owners, they would tell you that they love the fact that that payroll is going into the pockets of my staff and right out that pocket into a gallon of milk or a gallon of gas or more often than not eating out at a restaurant or whatever else. else. But I'm happy to take any questions. I probably went on longer than I should, but I'm happy to be here and answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you, Sheriff. Sure appreciate you being here and very informative discussion. We're going to go ahead and take questions, input from the audience. We have a microphone here if you'd like to speak. If there's somebody that's already, our last Truth and Taxation, we had 5 hours, and we don't want to go that long. If you've heard somebody say something, please don't repeat it. We'll take a note of that. But if you guys would like to maybe take a couple minutes each and share your advice or thoughts or questions. State your name, if you would, just so we can...
Yeah, Dan Kidder. I'm going to do exactly the opposite of what you just said and restate everything that we've just heard. I've been watching for the last week the conversations on Facebook. It's been great. We've got a lot of cop haters. All law enforcement sucks. You guys are corrupt. I guess you guys have made all kinds of money, padding your pockets. It made me angry. Paul, I've stood arm in arm with you, and we have fought true tyranny in this community. To have people come up here and call you tyrants, commissars, socialists, that's bullcrap. Mike, you've served this community for a very long time. Ken, you're my brother, and I know your passion for this community. You know, to say that you are padding your pockets without a scintilla of proof, that's a lie. If you don't have any evidence, it's a lie. There's misinformation out there about this whole process. I haven't heard anything tonight that I didn't know, except for what you offered with your experience. Because your meetings weren't transparent. The dozen or so of them that I've been to, I'm not special. I'm really not. Every person in this community could go to those meetings, could go to that website, could pull up that information, could see all of these reports, could have been involved in this process from the beginning, instead of coming out at the last second and saying, you guys are crooks, you hate this community, all cops are jackbooted thugs with their throats on our necks. That was a quote from a member of this tax group. They're jackbooted thugs with their boots on our throats. We know better. We know you. Paul, I've been in your house. I've been in Marilyn's house. I've stood side by side with King filling sandbags to see who could fill more when our neighbors in Enix houses were flooded. This is nonsense. The lies, the slanders, the misinformation, people coming forward at the last second thinking that they're going to come up with something that you haven't already studiously considered. A great time and resources. Did you set a time limit?
Well, yes, Luke said it, but he was trying to tell me that you were out of time.
Okay. So I appreciate you. I urge the members of this community who have said the things that they've said to consider what you have done for this community, that you're members of this community, and to look at this in a productive manner. Thank you.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm gonna take more than 2 minutes. But I've been prepping for this for 3 days. You guys know that Ascension email. There's a lot of information and a lot of things you aren't considering, so I'm gonna try to break it down.
Jeremy, we're gonna give you, honestly, Jeremy has really worked hard on this, and you take the time you need.
Okay, I appreciate that. So, I wanna at least address the 2-pod versus 1-pod issue. Because the one thing that wasn't on the cons up there is there's a big risk. The risk is if we don't fill the beds. So, I mean, I sent you my spreadsheet, you saw it. Like, I've crunched the numbers, and I talked to the sheriff, and I talked to Luke. I mean, I've gotten information from you guys. I'm not making stuff up here. And if we don't fill any contract beds, a 2-pod facility costs us $10 million more than what we're paying now. That's a lot of money. So it makes sense only if we recoup some of those costs by renting out beds, and it's going to be a roughly 670 bed facility, right? But that only works, the economics of that only work if the feds keep funding those rentals, right? That's the major driver in all of this. If you look across the nation, the feds are the driver behind this. Now, I know there's a lot of state, and they talked about the state, but if the feds go away, there will be so much competition for the state beds that we won't be able to fill a 600-bed facility. Now, the big risk is the feds, 49% of federal prisoners are there for drug-related charges. Now, in state, that's only 16%, but in the fed system, it's 49%. Drug decriminalization is here. Like, it's, you know, we funded it in 1980 roughly. That was a lot, that was way different than the world is today. So the possibility that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, certainly within our lifetime, that the feds decriminalize and they essentially, you know, kick out half the people in their prisons is very high. And so if we're talking about, you know, a building that's supposed to last 30, 40, 50 years, that's a big risk. So to build a 2-pod facility today on the hopes that 30 years from now that we're still getting federal prisoners and therefore they haven't, you know, crashed the whole system that's making money right now, that's a big risk. And you're asking us, the taxpayers, to take that risk. But I believe there is a solution. You said you guys wanted options, and I'm here to propose an option. And it was stated by, I don't know your name, sir, I apologize, but he blew past it. The remodel that he talked about was a 600-person remodel. It was remodeling, it was adding a 300-bed facility and remodeling the inside. We don't have to do that. We can add a pod and not remodel the jail portion on the inside. I mean, he's shaking his head, but it can be done. Because it can be done. It can be done. I refuse to believe that that's an impossibility. The biggest issue when I toured the jail was that the basement floods, basically the sewer backs up and it floods, right? So they need to take the stuff that's down there and get it upstairs somewhere so that it's not flooding as much. The runoff flooding is a minor annoyance, but that's been happening for 26 years, and they've been dealing with it for 26 years. At least the guy that was the maintenance guy had been there for 26 years. So the reality is that if they add a 300-person pod, which would be a 1-pod facility, right now the proposal is about $70 million. 25 million of that, according to Lucas, was for the 1 pod, and 35 million of that is essentially for new office buildings for the sheriff. If we put 1 pod in the current location and kept the jail and did a minor remodel so that, you know, into whatever additional office space they need, which wouldn't be a lot because they already have the office space, that would accomplish the goal for roughly half of what we're spending. There are more options. We need time to consider this and vet all those things out. And I would ask you to not put it up for a vote, but to take the year and let's get this right. One last thing and I'll stop. Multiple times in the tour, I heard poorly designed facility. All these problems that were a result of poor design. I think we heard it 4 or 5 times in that tour. Let's make sure we've got this one right. Taking a year doesn't do us any harm. A 6% increase is offset by a 1% reduction in interest rates. It can be offset by obviously dropping it by $30 million. There's ways to offset the scare tactic of a 6% increase. Let's take the time and get it right. Yes, you guys have been working hard on it, and I appreciate that, but people are paying attention now that their taxes are going up significantly. So let's take the year, don't put it up for a vote. Let's take the year, let's have more of these meetings, let's get it right.
Simon Leyland, Iron County. I'll second what Jeremy just said. And thank you, Sheriff, for your honest and acute assessment there. I feel like my biggest concern at this point is that we're turning a deeply moral and philosophical question of for-profit jails into a financial decision. And the financial decision has overshadowed everything else. I feel like if we can delay, like Jeremy said, for a year, that gives us time to have a vote on whether or not we want to do this from a moral and philosophical standpoint. I understand there's financial implications to this, and it's part of running the jail. But I think most of these people here in this room moved here because of the moral and philosophical position of Southern Utah. We're not LA, we're not wherever else. John, I'm sorry, can you pull up that last set of slides with the bar graphs, if you're able to?
I haven't been able to get the projector to come up.
All right, well, I encourage everybody to look at those again. A lot of these slides, I'm very deeply disappointed to see a lot of half-truths in these slides. They're very misrepresentative of the facts. Slides one after another that contradict each other, that are shown to show a specific set of data in a specific context that is completely out of context. I think Sheriff's, his testimony there was the most honest thing we've heard here since this has started in the last 2 weeks. I feel like you guys are working against yourself, okay? If you guys are more honest, you will have back into the people, but these half-truths are just digging us in a hole. I'll leave it at that. John, if you can get those back up, I'd love to just briefly mention 2 of those slides. Thank you.
Jason, could you reset the projector, see if it won't wake up when I plug it in? Thank you. Thank you.
I'm just concerned about the...
Can you speak in the mic now?
I don't like the idea that, I just feel like we're being discriminated against as being homeowners, because I feel like we're the only one that's going to get taxed, and then all the rest of the community doesn't have to pay for this job. It's only the homeowners, and that's not right. That's discrimination, at least. And so I think that something different needs to be done so that the others are paying too. And the other question is about these bonds. It looks like there's 3 different types of bonds, and it wasn't clear as to which one you're talking of going to. It sounds like maybe the general, and I'm just wondering why we're not doing more of the revenue one that sounds like it doesn't take to tax the community. So I'd just like to get that, cleared up in the ones to which one you go and buy and apply.
Thank you.
Bill Davies, I'm in the rescue area. Commissioner, stay the course, do what you know you have to do, build that jail. We heard tonight a different form of tax that could come in and help, and I would think that you should explore that. I think you drive by that complex up there and you go, well, that's a nice looking place, but inside it's got cancer. It's got HVAC cancer, plumbing cancer, lighting cancer, mechanical cancer, and you can't put bubble gum and Band-Aid on that place. Rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic up there, so the place that you have is a better solution. And I heard our sheriff give an impassioned plea 2 weeks ago about he needs a new facility. And the beauty of it is, by doing the quarter-cent tax and other stuff, the people that are going to pay for this aren't here yet. Those inmates that are contract inmates, they haven't arrived yet. And the new homes that D.H. Horton and Alex and those guys and Garrett White are building those $1.5 million homes are going to be huge revenue and tax-wise. So we're going to get a lot of sources of revenue to fund this thing and stay the course. And I like your comments. In California now they just added a $5,000 signing bonus and a 401k package to get somebody to come and be correctional officers. It's pathetic the way it's going. So stay the course, commissioners. You're doing the right thing.
I'm Roger McGallagher, and just a real brief history of myself. First of all, I worked for the Air Force, and I've spent over $2 billion, that's billions with a B, dollars in building facilities. And you're right, the jail will not stand. It must be tased and replaced. Second of all, my son is a correctional officer up in Draper.
And where? Sorry, we can't hear you, Brett.
My son is a correctional officer up in Draper. And last pay period, he worked 120 hours. And all the correctional officers are doing it. Sheriff, you're dead right. The facility up there will not withstand. And it's going to have to be contracted out or put out. So the new jail must come, and this is one way to fund it. Now, in regards to the rest of the way of funding it, we just voted down one tax and traded it for another tax. And we, the property owners of this county, are tax tired. We can't pay anymore. And we need the people who are, I'll use the word, people have hated me for my bluntness, mulching off the rest of us for us to pay for all these facilities and needs. We need to come up with a consumption tax. As for me, I will vote against the bond. I will vote against any form of property tax. I'm tired. I can't pay anymore. I'm on a fixed income, and it's not going up. And inflation is making it go down. I will not. Therefore, we need a consumption tax, and we'll support that measure only. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Emerson Firsch. Just appreciate you gentlemen giving people a chance to speak, and Sheriff, I appreciate what you said. Just by way of, I guess, my background, I've got a pretty extensive history in financial services and investment management. I've got a number of professional designations, a bunch of securities licenses, some related to the municipal sector. And I just think it's important for people to understand, and it's been alluded to already, the different types of bonds that are out there. There's revenue bonds, which I know was mentioned. Looks like Beaver seems to be making money, that are tied to the profits that are made from the program. This is for the people out here so they understand it. We had a toll road that was put up down in Orange County where I used to live, 73, cut about 45 minutes off people's drives to get from Irvine down to Mission Viejo, but you had to pay a toll. And people paid the toll, and the toll ended up paying off the bonds, and when the bonds were paid off, the toll went away. General obligation bonds, though, the collateral for that is taxing authority, pure and simple. And you've said that, so I'm not accusing anybody of hiding anything, but that there are two types of GO bonds. There's a limited one, which has a cap, and you probably already all know this. There's a cap on the tax limit that can be increased, and then there's unlimited, which is whatever. And so that would be something that I think people should know. The other thing I'd just say, I had a chance to consult with a redevelopment agency in Southern California a number of years ago that did a bond issue to put together a public library. And I can tell you that 3 months to get the information that people out here are going to need to make an educated decision isn't enough time. It is a process. I also have to ask where this 4.61 and 30 years information is coming from, because unless there's an underwriting group, a selling group, red herring, some kind of marketing that's been done to kind of determine what the yield is potentially going to be, that's kind of an arbitrary statement. I mean, is it insured, whatever, right on time? Okay, anyway, I appreciate you guys giving everybody time. Thanks for your service.
So my name is Ethan Gale. I appreciate the commission taking the time to meet Monday, your commission meeting, and rescinding the truth in taxation resolution. I think it's important to give the opportunity to the people to vote on it. Whether it passes or not, that's a different issue, right? And Sheriff, I appreciate you taking the time to at least lead me on a tour of the jail and see what the issues are and what opportunities are there as well. So, and then Sheriff, I appreciate your comments, because quite frankly, you kind of gave us some of the good things and some of the bad things and some of the challenges there. And you answered some of the questions I had about the legislation of who's going to pay, or what are the increases that are scheduled for inmates that are gonna come in and pay for the jail, right? Having a mechanism in there that automatically triggers that increase is much more beneficial than renegotiating time and time and time again. Two concerns I really have. One is I don't support a for-profit jail model. And the reasons for that is inevitably government, and it's not a reflection specifically on any individual here, is inefficient. You can go and look at, see some of the different things that we've done in all stages of government. For example, just building a jail. I was looking at some different jails that were built by counties in the past 5-6 years. And the average cost overrun is anywhere from 120% to 200%. Floyd County Jail in Iowa was built in 2018, and it ended up at 147% of the budget, the pre-built budget. Now there's lots of things that we can't control in that, right? But I think if we were to go to a smaller model, whatever that is, I mean, you guys did a nice presentation of what the dollars and cents were. But I think that there's ways to do this differently. And even if it is putting it off for a year to get more information to the folks and see what we can do, possibly a little different. Wait to see if there's an opportunity for sales tax revenue, things like that. But
That's time.
Thank you.
My name is David Williams. I'm the commissar guy. I don't mind owning the things I say. I'm not a keyboard warrior. I'll stand here in front of everybody and say, if you support this, you're wrong, okay? Now, I'm gonna say, I wanna educate Dan. The word commissar is German, Russian, and it's derived from Latin. It just means commissioner, okay? There's some connotations there, and I meant to convey that because I feel like our government is moving towards communism. And that includes you guys, okay? I don't want to insult you. I know you guys have earned the respect of the community. I'm just a long-haired musician. People don't know me, and they probably think I'm a pothead or something. Never been stoned in my life, like I said at the last meeting. Paul, you said something Monday. You said taxes haven't increased in 20 years. Well, since I moved here 10 years ago, my property taxes have doubled, okay? I lost my homestead exemption for some reason, and I went to try to dispute it, but you guys hire some guy to dispute me. And so you can't win with government, even if you try to do the right thing. But anyway, I want you guys to think about it, because I'm more swayed by the people out here who can't afford to pay your tax. I don't care about your jail. I don't care about your reasons. I don't care about your bottom line. I do care about the fact, like Simon said, that you guys are capitalizing human lives, even though they're douchebags, and a lot of them deserve to be in jail. Put them in an old jail, not a nice new shiny jail, okay? I know you guys don't like what I say. I know a lot of you don't like what I say. But this country was founded on freedom, fighting taxes, fighting tyranny, okay? And you need to stand up for freedom. You need to quit supporting government for everything. Quit being slaves.
That's it, Dave. That's fine. I want to take a minute to address that while we're going real quick. I didn't say taxes haven't gone up, Dave. What I said is the county levy, you can go back and listen to it. The county can only collect so much money based on our levy. In 2015, our levy was 0.0015. And as property values went up, our levy went down. It's 0.0008. It's almost half. Now have taxes increased? Yes, but the amount of money that the county, our levy, that line on your tax cannot go up. If values go up, our levy goes down. If values go down, our levy goes up. We collect the same amount of money, and we haven't had a tax increase on that levy in over 20 years. So I just want to put it up. Now go ahead. Thank you.
Margaret Kilcoyne. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the statements and questions that other folks in front of me has already said.
Ma'am, could you speak like
we have a hard time hearing.
We have a hard time hearing.
Speak, be a rock star and get right on the mic.
I was going to say,
you can even
Margaret,
take it down if it's
I'm sure. Margaret Kilcoyne, I'm not going to repeat things and statements that other folks in front of me already stated or asked. There's one question that I'd like to ask you gentlemen. Several of you mentioned earlier is that we don't, in this case, Iron County don't charge booking fees. Why not? Because other states charge booking fees, and if you're looking for revenues, that is an opportunity for us to look at, or for you to look at as a revenue.
I'd be happy to answer that. The reason is the state law doesn't allow it. The sheriff's office, by state law, is required to provide a jail for everybody that utilizes it within the county, and we're not allowed to charge those other agencies any booking fees or anything like that. We have to bear that burden ourselves.
Then can you please educate me as to why or how other states can charge booking fees? And we as Utah can't.
Every state makes their own law. Okay? The Utah State Legislature has chosen to put that burden on the county sheriff and not on the municipalities within those counties.
So going forward in the future, is there something that we could look toward and maybe modifying or changing? Or that's just a drop
that guy right there, if you can convince the legislature to change it, then yes. But it's nothing that the county can change.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe I could just add one thing about booking fees for municipalities. So it used to be allowed in Utah back, early 2000s probably. There were a lot of lawsuits between counties and cities that were generated based off of those booking fees. And so the legislature came forward and said, we have to put a stop to this. We're going to make it required that the county, through the sheriff, house any inmates brought to them by competent authorities, the language of the statute. And for that, the county gets a percentage of the surcharge on traffic tickets that are written by municipalities that kind of offsets that a little bit. So I don't think you'll find much interest by the legislature to go back to allow counties to charge municipalities for booking fees, because it's such a contentious issue. Starts to bring up questions of double taxation and all kinds of things that residents get pretty cranky about. I don't think there's an appetite for that, just as a little background.
Appreciate it.
I'm not that short. I'm Renan Hewlett. I want to say, Sheriff Glover, I really appreciate your remarks. I think they were hopefully educational. I hope people listened to them today, and that took a lot out of what I had planned to say. So I do appreciate it. I've worked in the jail for 21 years now, and been actually there in that building for 30. I've seen very hardworking, fiscally responsible employees who are dedicated to the safety and security of this community and the inmates they're charged with. They've made cuts, they've made do, they've patched together, gone without, reinvented and researched ways to keep this archaic, inefficient, staff-intensive facility serving the needs of this community at the highest level of efficiency. What they do should be impossible. We bought the state out of this facility by contracting with federal inmates and paid that off in 10 years. We then contracted a small number of state inmates so that we could gain more money and provide workers for laundry, maintenance, and culinary. We turned every conceivable space into additional housing. Classrooms, programming rooms, a gym, some offices in the back. We started turning away Class B and C misdemeanors because we couldn't house them. We didn't have the room. Your experience of mattresses on the floor and 3 and 4 inmates in a 2 inmate cell. We turned a visiting booth into overflow housing in our booking area. It almost borders on the ridiculous as I'm saying it out loud. We cannot fix this facility. It is falling apart literally underneath us. We have no sewer holding together any longer. What it would take to
So my name is Aaron Wildlady. I currently work at the jail, and I just want to touch on subject real quick.
Aaron, what was your last name?
Wadley. It got brought up that contract for federal prisoners it might not be there. And I believe it was a month of June or July, we brought back about 20 federal inmates within a 2-week span. And we're always getting asked, hey, do you guys want more? That's always the question that we get asked. And that's one thing I just want to bring up real quick. Thank you, guys.
Hi, I'm Chris Covington from Barrowlawn. Generally don't speak at these things, so you have to bear with me. I think what a lot of people who aren't here or aren't being vocal are concerned about is we're really hoping for is just a reasonable auction. $100 million is a tough sell for anything in Iron County. I mean, anything. That's a lot of money. The scale of it is just so hard for people to contemplate right now. When, I mean, look around. Most of the people here are probably going to be on fixed income. People are rationing in some. People are letting their grass die because they can't afford their water bill. This is a choice that somebody's making on their behalf, a tough choice that's taken away from them. And this is a group of people that already made so many hard decisions. And then, I mean, just to have $100 million like dangling over this, if it goes to the ballot, I mean, you guys know it's not going to pass. Nobody, I mean, who's going to look at $100 million in an inflation crisis and a housing crisis and see that on the ballot and check it? It's not going to happen. I mean, the school board should be in here having these tough conversations and taking their lumps like everybody else, because it's just a very unreasonable thing to do during a very, very difficult time. But that's really all I got to say.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marie Zafiropoulos, and I just need some clarification on this bond if it does go to an election. When I received notice of my 2024 proposed tax increase, it was 100%. Everything in the Greenbelt was exactly double from last year. When I see what you put up here on the board, it doesn't compute with what I received in the mail. I mean, if I have a bill on one piece of property for $850 or something, and next year it's supposed to be $1,700, that's a lot more than the $2 or the $3 that you put up there on a $400,000 home. So I just need some clarification, if somebody can help me with that.
John, you want to?
Yes, I'm really sorry that my overhead has stopped working. So, to reiterate, originally the commissioners had sought a truth in taxation for the Iron County General Fund. For most of your tax bills, that represents about 9 to 11% of your tax bill currently. That was essentially doubling, which would be about a 9 to 11% increase on your tax bill, not a doubling of the entire bill. So that was that truth in taxation. That's been a great source of confusion as far as whether or not your tax bill doubles, because it doesn't. If that were to have gone through and that's since been repealed,
okay,
it would be about a 9 to 11% increase on most parcels.
Which is a lot better than 100%.
Correct. It's not nothing, but it's not 100% increase. And I.
Because every single piece of property I have in the Greenbelt, it was proposed earlier, 99.6% or whatever.
For that one levy. So this is a point of clarification that might be good to make as well. The counties in Utah are the property tax collecting agency. There's the recorder and the assessor and the auditor and the treasurer, and all those folks work together to collect taxes for the county, but also for the municipalities, for the water districts, those government entities. There are different levies on those. A levy is an individual tax. So on my particular bill, were I think 11 levies, and it would have added about $180 to my $1,900 tax bill at home in Cedar City.
Well, see, I could kind of understand that, but maybe I need to come and visit you and show you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to go through it with you, absolutely. And I know you've got a fairly significant amount of holdings, but in every case, Greenbelt or not, it's about 10% or so of the total tax bill. That portion was the part.
Which it needs to be clarified so we know how to vote.
We agree. One of our frustrations with this process was that form that we had to send to every landowner, it's set by the State Tax Commission. And because we are the tax collector, and because it says Iron County on it, it's easy to go, oh my goodness, my taxes are doubling. And in one sense, that is true, because that one levy essentially was doubling. Yes. Your tax bill isn't doubling. And of course, what the commissioners are considering tonight is a different
So the bond would be different for our taxes then?
Yeah, so Truth in Taxation is basically the government entity, going through the process to increase the tax rate to cover expenses. A GO bond, a government, help me out. Thank you. General obligation bond is an increase to cover a specific loan, and so that's more like what the school district does.
Right.
Yeah. And so it covers that loan for the life of that loan, and then drops off once the bond has been paid off.
Okay.
So that's what the commissioners are will be considering tonight.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, just real quick. Sorry. I just wanted to respond to a couple comments that I've heard before. The one, I've heard the moral issue of what has been stated as a for-profit jail. I want everybody to understand how this actually works. These are not for-profit facilities. The inmates that are contracted, that are farmed out to county jails throughout the state of Utah, these are criminals who have been convicted and are serving a sentence either in the federal system or the state system. And you and me and every taxpayer in the state is paying for these inmates at a federal rate or a state rate, which is higher than the per diem that they charge the counties to house these inmates. They pay the counties to house these inmates because it is a burden on the county to provide for the food and the care and whatnot. But true for-profit facilities have no motivation to parole people, to release them early. Because this is a public facility, like Tracy said, these facilities are intended to hopefully educate and rehabilitate as many people as possible. We all know that's not, it's not going to be everybody. But these are inmates that are in the system that you're paying for as a taxpayer, either the state or the federal rate, anyway. And if they're farmed out to the county jails, the rate actually is less, the burden is less on the federal and state level, and it benefits the counties because the rural counties get an opportunity to hire local people and employ them. So this is not a for-profit facility where counties are trying to take advantage of the criminal element and make money off them. They get paid a reimbursement basically to inherit the liability and the cost, which is significant, to house an inmate on a daily or monthly basis.
Simon, you've spoken. We would allow one comment per person. This isn't a debate.
I appreciate that.
This is not a debate. Let these folks have been in line a long time.
I mean, since he's directly...
No, this is not a debate. Sit down, please. Thank you. Sit down, please. Thank you. Sit down, please. Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sam Crawley, and I'll make this quick. I think that our law enforcement needs the tools, the right tools to keep themselves safe and in turn keep our communities safe. I think if they need a new jail, and it sounds like they do, get a new jail. Build it. Thanks.
My name's Rick Roman. I am a tax-paying citizen here, live in the Fiddler's Canyon area. The company I work for owns a 40,000 square foot facility, which will hopefully become a neighbor of the new jail facility. We're over there in the area that your land has been purchased. So unlike the first gentleman that spoke, when I came to the meeting here a few weeks ago, I just had received the same letter everyone else did and was concerned about. It's like, and I did look at it as a doubling, but it's not a doubling. Obviously not all of our property taxes are going to the county. I showed I'm assuming what was my county portion going from almost 300 to somewhere around 500. It was going up about $300 a year under the original proposition there. Which, yes, I mean, everybody, along with everybody else, don't have extra money just to throw around. But I sit and I listen to Sheriff Carpenter give us the description of this dilapidated jail he's into. For me personally, it was music to my ears. I thought, that sounds like a great place for a prisoner. Unfortunately, most of the citizenry of our country does not have the same outlook with dealing with criminals that I do. And so I can totally see lawsuits coming for human rights infractions. And then he explains about the areas where you don't have visibility and we're putting our officers at risk. And the jail is full. I don't want these guys, if they belong in jail, I don't want people being turned out and back on the street. They need to be in jail. And so if we need to build this facility, then we need to build the facility. I mean, people talk about the for-profit, and I love the answer that you're giving. Just real quick, we're all paying federal taxes and state taxes. That money's already being spent. We're already spending it. Why are we letting it all go to Beaver and everywhere else? Bring some of it back here that can pay our officers who get paid peanuts now enough money to live on.
Hi, my name's Addison Adams. I work in the area in law enforcement. I've been here all my life. I would not want any of your jobs up there, not even yours, Sheriff. The jail needs to be replaced, there's no doubt. There's no way you're gonna build one pod by that jail and not fix the other part of it. I've worked 20 years ago when I was plumbing. I did some remodel work on that jail and it was having places falling apart then. I've seen what the jail's like. I take people there. You guys need a new place. I don't even know why we're not. The argument between one pod and two pods, I don't even think it's an argument. You're talking about less than $3 a month per property owner, average property owner. I don't even think that's a point to be arguing. And I don't really understand why nobody is talking about the jobs this will likely create in every other area of government. That's all anybody talks about is how this is going to bring 20 jobs to the area. This is going to bring 30 jobs to the area. I know people who would love to be a corrections officer. I don't know why we're not interested in upping that revenue to a point where you can put some more guys on and pay them a decent wages. Anyway, I appreciate all you do.
Howdy, my name's Robert Hampton. Sorry about my voice, but it's the only one I got. I'm fairly new to this area. Been here 2.5 years, and we moved from Southern California because we couldn't afford to retire there. We are living on Social Security. We came up here because we figured we could live okay on Social Security. But after this last tax bill, and I'd like to address this to our clerk here, that what they did is not just increased our taxes by $153 or whatever, proposed, I'm sure. But what they did is they went back and started taking houses that were built several years ago and go, oh, hey, look at that's the same square footage as this house over here that just sold. So now this house that I paid $400 for is now worth $675, and we get the tax based on that. That is not fair. That is what brought Prop 13 to California, because my taxes went up 30%, and that is going to kill people like me from being able to retire here. And I'm hoping I didn't make a bad decision. Thank you.
My name is Jameson Fife. This has actually been a very interesting meeting. The last meeting had a lot of emotion. There was a lot of anger, and it was directed in all sorts of places. And I'm glad that this one is a little bit toned down, I guess, so I appreciate that. But I really think we need to consider what Representative Schiff talked about. We really need to, in my opinion, take this off of a bond type of payment plan and see if we can get more of a broad-based tax-generating income for it so that the burden is shared by everybody. I know that we talk about, some people are saying that their taxes are assessed to go up, 100%, and it's, only 11% on average. Mine was somewhere in the 86% increase, proposed increase, I should say. So rather than putting that burden on just a narrow group of people, let's spread it out to everybody. We talk about all of these jobs and everything else and benefiting the community. Well, let's let the community as a whole pay for it, not dump it onto a narrow group of people.
My name is Hillary Gale. I've heard a lot of people talking today about the inmates and the sheriff's employees, and I want to talk about the people of Iron County. In 2018, the Salt Lake Tribune reported that Iron County was the fifth poorest county in Utah. In the last meeting, it was reported that Iron County is also the fourth lowest taxed county in Utah. This tax increase would push us to 18th or 19th, I can't remember, out of 29 counties. A tax increase isn't going to cripple me. I don't think it will cripple any of you, but I'm concerned that it will cripple families in this community who are already living at and below the poverty line. If we are the fourth poorest county in Utah, then being the fourth lowest taxed county in Utah seems to be on par to me. I do have some concerns that were brought up about not filling beds, or what if the laws change and we're not able to house those inmates. That bill is going to be put on the backs of the people of this community, who many of them are already living at and below the poverty line. I'm in favor of a smaller jail that costs less money for the people of our community. So thank you for your service.
My name is Wes Barton. I was just going to tell you, in 2020, I bought a little tractor for my farm. And I bought a little one because I didn't think I could justify the cost of the bigger one that I probably actually needed. And so I paid $10,000 in 2020 for a little tiny tractor. And then this last year, I finally bought the tractor that I needed. And instead of costing me $18,000 that it would have in 2020, it cost me $30,000. And so my opinion is if we have to do it, and it sounds like we do, I think we should do it right the first time.
My name is Ray Alvey from Cedar City. From a person who has dealt with very large construction projects and had dealt with the budgeting and monitoring of the costs. I hate waste, and I have some questions I'd like to ask, and then I'll sit down and let you answer the questions. Number one, how many jail employees and support staff does the old jail employ? That's number one. Number two is how many employees and support staff does the new jail project to employ? And on the screen that he put up there, he had a figure of $2 million for 17 employees. That works out to $117,000 a year for each employee. I know after you back out the insurances, taxes, Social Security, unemployment taxes, that's about $85,000 to $90,000 a year for the employees. I'd like to know how I can get that job. And then the last one is, I'd like to ask the King County Sheriff, when your jail was built, what was the projected bid? And then, I know this is all public knowledge, but I haven't had a chance to research it. What was the projected bid on the jail, and what did it come in at when it was finished? Thank you.
Sir, you might need to repeat some of those questions.
Can I go first?
Yes, go right ahead.
Just so that I can remember the question. We projected our cost of 18 million. We came in at about 16.3, I think.
When it was totally finished?
Yeah.
That's totally unheard of from most things that I've dealt with.
It is. We had to go to, we cut some square footage.
Oh, okay.
We changed some finishes. We went to CMU instead of other finishes. I mean, we did a number of things to try to shave.
Yeah, you did modifications to bring it down.
Yeah, and Babcock Design was right in the middle of that and helped us through that to try to come in under budget. It was important to us that we did. We didn't like the $18 million number, which is funny because 18 million sounds like nothing now, but at the time that was by far the most expensive building that had ever been built in Kane County. It's now been eclipsed by a couple of others, but
I applaud you for that. Congratulations.
Just to add to that real quickly, with all the county jails, and we do other public work in the state of Utah with cities and counties with public safety and fire, and libraries, and city halls and such. Public funds, unlike private funds, that's an absolute do not exceed number. When Tracy,
I disagree with you.
well, in my experience, in our experience with the projects that we've done in the state of Utah, when Tracy gave us the budget limitation, that's what we designed the project to, and we had to work very closely with the client and with the contractor to come up with solutions, creative solutions, to get the most benefit and have the most bang for the buck. There are countless examples all over the United States of government projects that go ridiculously over budget.
Yes, there is.
In my line of work, if Tracy hires me to design an $18 million jail and it comes in at 30 million, I'm not doing another jail after that. I'll tell you that, because
most of that is the contractor, though. It's not yours.
well, it's a team effort. The architect and the design team has the responsibility to work closely with the contractor and to make good choices. And the hundreds of hours that Commissioner Blake talked about, that's why we do that. We view the budget as an absolute do not cross line, and that's how we go about working on the design, as well as that's why the contractor was brought on early, so that we have a target to hit right from the beginning, and we lose the contentious dynamic that happens in just a design bid situation where we completely finish the design, put it out on the street, and you can get back a wide range of bids, not all of which are honest ones. Because of that, when in this scenario where you bring on construction manager, general contractor, CMGC, they have the same criteria that the design team does. We're all aiming for the same number, and the whole process is such that we make a list of priorities and the functions that the jail has to meet, and we compare that with real-time estimating as we go through the design process, and we go round and round. It's an iterative process where as the budget, as we track, if we get offline, then we've got to bring it back in, and that's by looking at alternate systems, changing square footage of things. So it does happen, without a doubt. But That is not at all the scenario that's happening here, and as Sheriff Glover can attest to, that's not the only one that we've done, but that's absolutely how we have to do public projects. I'm a taxpayer too, and we feel an obligation to be stewards of the client's money, whether it's the county or the city or whomever. And so there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to get to that point, so that the scenario you're describing doesn't happen.
I have worked in that. I know. I have worked on $1 billion projects before, handling the budgeting. So I know for a fact, and I know how contractors can override a lot of the stuff by bringing in RFIs, change orders, and all types of things. And they will raise the price no matter what. So this $100 million bid, I don't see it absolutely going anywhere near that unless you cut back the square footage and the cost. That's the only way that you can do it.
With a facility such as a correctional facility, the required infrastructure and the type of construction and all of the factors that go into it, there's no doubt they're expensive facilities.
Right.
They are expensive
It's
facilities.
also very rigid, and it's very stringent on what you got to meet, the qualifications, and so whatever the contractor's going to push in there, he's going to push in there.
The only way the budget comes down is by taking out scope.
That's right.
And that means you make the building smaller, you reduce it. It's like if you were to build a house.
I know the jail is very needed, I really do. I just hate waste.
Maybe I could just touch on one of your other questions. I know there's others in line, but in my experience with the payroll question, so my average cost for new employees around $110,000 total cost. Their actual starting wage is $42,000 to $44,000. So by the time you pay state mandated retirement, all the benefits packages, everything, that's just the way it is. They're not making $85,000 a year. I wish they were.
Well, yeah.
I can answer your question about staffing. So currently, if we're fully staffed, we have 55 employees at our current job.
That includes support staff?
That includes support staff.
Okay, thank you.
And projected at one pod facility, if we were at full capacity with 150 more contract inmates, we would be at 70 staff.
Okay.
2 pod facility. Again, you get into a position where we will learn as we grow, but we're projecting about 95 employees with a 2 pod job.
Thank you for your answer.
And just to comment on that, as well as we don't have to do those all at one time. As we bring the inmates in, we can grow the staff to meet the contract bed spaces we fill.
Thank you for letting us ask questions. As I was listening.
What's your name, ma'am?
Oh, I'm sorry. Deborah Mulcahy, M-U-L-C-A-H-Y. I was at your last meeting and it was heated and whatever, so thank you for taking the time to explain more, and thank you for taking off the truth in taxation, because that was really upsetting, I think, to most of the community. I know that my tax was, my assessors, what my property is worth, went up quite a bit, and I was able to appeal it, and it came down 61,000. I do think we need a jail, but I think you guys are looking at Grande, and I think with the school board, I go to school board meetings also, a 500,000 bond is coming on this tax thing. They're
I think it's
pushing.
75 million.
The school board is 75 million.
It's a GO bond, it's 75 million.
Yeah, okay, so we have that, 75 million, and then 100 million. I think with the one guy saying, with seeing criminals getting left, out of jail or whatever, and they stop funding it, I think a new jail with 1 pod for now, and then when you sell the land at the old jail, that would give you money to help buy the second pod. That's just my humble opinion. Thank you very much.
Richard Wilson. I'd like to thank this group for spending so much time over the last 3 years, doing all this legwork and finding all this information, which I've kept abreast of, but I didn't have to do the legwork. I didn't have to do the investigation. I didn't have to figure it all out by myself. And I want to thank the commission and those who work with the commission for doing that for the community. I look at things and I see things that are done as if the population is static, which is not very wise. We're projected to be at 100,000 in the county in less than 30 years. With that, we'll also have a reciprocating population at the jail. It may be low, but it's going to track with the population. One gentleman suggested that if the feds decriminalize drugs, that we may be at a loss. Their criminal activity does not all center around their addictions. And just decriminalizing drugs, just as in California saw, decriminalizing petty theft didn't stop the smashing raps. They increased exponentially. And so I don't think we're going to see that, unfortunately, that the population is going to stop being poor citizens. I also appreciate being on a fixed income. I'm on a fixed income. I think almost everyone in this room is on some kind of a fixed income, unless they're getting a pay raise every week. And I appreciate that people have moved here for the benefits of living in a low tax, unregulated area. But the reality is, you moved into a community that had a need for a jail.
That's 2 minutes.
You moved into a community that needed a jail. If you've lived here for a number of years, you live in a community that's fallen behind on keeping up. So those are the two choices.
Ma'am, you can take that mic now.
That's fine, I'll go fast. I was typing in as we went. So, my name's Anna Teeples. I just want to read this really fast that I kind of put together. We're all here because we want to invest in our future. It's critical for the safety and security and the well-being of our community. We face a critical decision, one that requires us to balance the immediate needs of today with the long-term vision of tomorrow. The construction of the decision that will not only address the pressing needs, but also prevent further financial strain. Our county's law enforcement and judicial system play a fundamental role in maintaining public safety and upholding the rule of law. However, the existing facility has become inadequate to meet the demands of our growing population. This inadequacy poses a risk to both the community members, all of us here, and the law enforcement personnel who tirelessly serve us. By investing in a new sheriff's office and jail, we are investing in the safety and security of every citizen in Iron County. It's essential to acknowledge that while investing in this new infrastructure comes with an upfront cost, the cost of delaying it can be more detrimental in the long run. As our population continues to grow, so does the demand for the law enforcement and correctional facility. Delaying in this investment could lead to overcrowding, which we've already seen, the infrastructure crumbling, which that's what we're already facing. So we need to be proactive now and save ourselves from higher costs and greater challenges and potential crisis down the road. Raising taxes is never an easy decision and should never be taken lightly. However, when done responsibly, we can invest in our future. We must consider the long-term sustainability of our decision. By investing in the new sheriff's office and jail, we create a facility that is designed to serve us well into the future. This facility, oh, that's my time? Dang, okay, well, we have to make this decision not just for today, but for our legacies, for the future. And I know it's a lot, but I'm willing to pay it.
Thank you, name's Ron LaPratt. I just had a couple of questions. I need some clarity on a couple of points. I saw the figures on the board of $8 million that the Beaver County is bringing in on their prisoners.
When was that jail built and how many beds was it?
It's about 400 beds, and it's been built, I don't know, it's been remodeled 2 or 3 times. I'm not sure when the most recent.
So it's been up for quite a while.
I want to say they built their first their first housing unit in their original building with the courts in '96, and then I think they added the second pod in mid-2000s.
Okay, so like I said, I'm just trying to learn some of this process. So
it started out as a 200-bed jail. It's now a 400-bed jail.
Okay, 400. And you're projecting what 600 beds here if you did both pods. So I haven't watched my taxes. I've only been here about 2 years, and it's proposed tax this year. The whole tax bill is like $500 more than it was last year. Now we're going to have another $350. I know with the first proposal, and that's so you had a initial slush fund to get the project going and then get the other funding. If I understood that correctly. I want to know how did Beaver County do it? When I went online, just kind of looking. Garfield County, about 5,000 population is what it gave me in 2021. Beaver was about 6,000, and Iron County was about 60,000. How did they get started with their project with so much smaller population and not overburden the taxpayers?
I can only speak for Kane County, but in my case, we got started because we had a need in our jail. Our jail was broken down, and we had
I understand.
on the floor.
But where did the money come from? Like I said, with a small county like Beaver County and Garfield County, and they put up these new jails a few years back. But where did how that initial funding come about?
Yeah, so fair question. So in our case, we funded our jail program through lease revenue bonds, which you've been told about, I'm assuming. We looked at general obligation bonds as well. There are benefits to general obligation bonds, like a lower interest rate, for example. We looked at those. Essentially, I don't want to oversimplify it, but a general obligation bond is secured. The collateral is basically your properties and the ability for the commissioners to tax your properties. That's the collateral, so it's super secure, so they'll give you a low interest rate. In the case of lease revenue bonds, you're basically identifying as a revenue stream. You're going to dedicate that revenue stream to pay a lease. So the municipal building authority would build the building, which is the county commissioners wearing a different hat. They would build the building, and the county would lease the building from the municipal building authority using a source of revenue. In my case, we use the source of revenue from rental beds to the state of Utah to pay that bond. So those are a couple of types of bonds. That's the way we paid for that facility. There's no way the taxpayers of Kane County would have or could have funded that jail or would have wanted to subsidize the state of Utah to the tune of 166 state inmates. We wouldn't want to.
So how come we can't follow kind of the same suit? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out, with such a different population.
Well, a couple things. Obvious things that I'll just mention quickly is that interest rates are way higher, building costs have gone way up, so I think what's being proposed, or what I gather reading between the lines that's being proposed, is a bit of a combination, a general obligation bond to fund the process, and then hopefully you can generate as much revenue as possible to mitigate the actual impacts of that general obligation bond. So if they're able to have 400 inmates as contract inmates, federal or state, and generate a good chunk of the revenue required to make the bond payment, then the general obligation wouldn't be as high, possibly, right? And so that's the way I understand that this is kind of playing out. They have to secure it with collateral, so it has to be a general obligation bond or some other form. I don't know that you could raise enough revenue in today's world unless you build a really big facility. I don't know that you could scale inmate rental beds or contract beds at a rate that would pay today's construction costs significantly, like it did back when we did our facilities. And consequently, I told this story of Kane County in the 90s when they were proposing the project to be built that I was against. The construction cost of that facility was $7.9 million, if I remember right. By the time we got around to building it in 2010, we were at 18 million. So that tells you kind of.
It just sounds as though you found a way to not burden the taxpayers.
Hey, there was one thing you said, and then I'll address it. This is a question that's come up across the board. You talked about, and let me address this just generally because this is something that's come up over and over and over again in these discussions. You got two pieces of mail in the last little bit. First is a valuation of your property with an estimated property tax attached to that. We talked about how that had gone up several $100s. And then there was, after that, the other document was the proposed truth in taxation tax increase. I want to make really clear that these two documents and these two things are totally separate. The valuation of your property with the proposed, it gives you your valuation, which gives you your estimated property tax bill for 2023. Has nothing to do with the bond payment or the tax, the proposed tax increase or proposed bond payment. When you get your valuation, that's the valuation with the tax rate that's been set by the Utah State Tax Commission, the assessor's office. That's not a proposed tax increase. That's your valuation, and that's what's going to be required to be paid on that property tax. And there's a lot of people, even the folks that were talking about doing a referendum against. There's a lot of people that I talked to that said, well, if we do a referendum, that's going to take my 2023 valuation back to 2022, and so we're not going to have to pay that percentage. Valuation goes up, and you have to pay more taxes. That's absolutely false. I mean, the two items are not related. So I just want people to understand that valuation of their home. That's been valued. That's going to be your potential tax bill. If you don't agree with that valuation, please come and appeal that through the Board of Equalization. But that's a completely separate issue. The proposed, it was the truth in taxation, that's gone. We're not even talking about that anymore. The proposed general obligation bond to go on the ballot has nothing to do with the valuation of your home. They're completely separate, and they're just not even related anymore. There's been a lot of confusion in that. I don't know how to explain it any more simple than that.
I totally understand that part of my bank account.
Right, yeah, I get it. Yeah. Me too. And I don't even remember exactly what you said, but that just kind of triggered in my mind. We just had a lot of questions about it. I think that just needed to be addressed generally. So, sorry, I didn't hit the sheriff in the face. But we got witnesses. I'm
Blaine Day, Cedar City. I've been watching this jail issue for several years, as long as all of you guys have been in office. And I really appreciate you sending out that truth in taxation notice. They've increased my taxes by $224 a year. Just one little line item being doubled. I say I'm grateful for that because it woke up this community. I dare say that 98% of these people in this county have no idea our jail is worn out. And you woke them up. I appreciate that. And if we weren't as exercised about our federal taxes as we are over $224, we'd all have tens of thousands of dollars more in our pockets. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bill Mowry.
This last one will be our last public comment. Go ahead.
My name is Bill Mowry. I live out in the county. First off, thank you very much for your tax idea. That's a good idea. Second of all, thank you for giving your deputies a raise. They needed it. But as far as the jail, I agree with I am a retired sheriff's deputy. I went through the struggles of Orange County, California. When I started with the Sheriff's Department, we had 750 employees. When I left, we had 1,600 because of our jail expansion. I went through the areas where we had triple bunking for inmates. I went through the period of time where we used to serve TV dinners because it met the national code for requirements for nutrition to do away with our kitchens. So I've been through that. I jail expansion, if we did the current one and you put in a single pod, that you would have to update the entire jail facility to standards. But if you built that pod to those standards and you didn't use the current jail and you used it for office space, you would not have to take and meet that office space to current standards. You could update that as office space. The one thing I didn't like about your design, on your 2-pod design, was it puts us to the same predicament as you could never add another pod, say 20 years down the line. I think that's something that should be considered when you're looking at that. As far as the taxation things that you guys talk about, I have a house in Modena. I bought 2 years ago for $30,000. You just valued it at $108,000. We don't have running water, we don't have sidewalks, we don't have any of those things. But that's the increases that you guys do. And when you're on fixed incomes and you're evaluating our houses, you're not considering that that raises our insurance rates and everything that goes along with it. So that's what I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Just by way of clarification, sir, what you said about if we had the ability to just use the existing jail as office space, you're absolutely correct. The cost would be significantly less. There still would be a lot of infrastructure challenges. But what we can't do is just build a pod without the supporting infrastructure to make the pod work, namely the laundry, the kitchen, all of the supporting functions that have to go with all the inmate management. When you're talking about a 336-bed pod, you're talking roughly 900-ish, 1,000 meals a day. That's not a insignificantly sized kitchen, so you would need probably 10 to 15,000 square feet of additional infrastructure that you'd have to add as new construction at $500 a square foot. So it's not as simple as just building a pod and ignoring the rest. You can't do that without this infrastructure. The concept that I showed relies on the fact that the existing jail structure, where the support already is, the kitchen and the laundry would be remodeled and expanded to take on the additional housing burden. And you would also, if you just built the pod with 336 beds and you give up the 200 beds that you have in your jail, you now only have a net increase of 130 beds, which in terms of your long-term growth and the needs that the jail has to maintain and be able to house inmates as the population goes up, as was mentioned, that timeline gets extremely shortened, and now you have a landlocked facility. So that's the reason behind that.
I understand that, but one of the things that also I worry about.
It's a really big room. Yeah. And we have people online.
The other thing I worry about is that this is just the snowball effect. I understand you probably need a new jail, but jails need a lot of water. So your next bond's going to be for a new sewer plant, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And if we're going to do this, I'm glad you brought up earlier, let the people that are moving into the area pay for that, either by the tax or charge 50 cents a square foot for a new development. And let the rich people, Burgess, Nichols, all these people help pay for this facility.
Thank you.
I did also want to mention that the facility is actually designed, if you look at the floor plan that's on the screen, this red arrow that goes to the right, it's actually designed to accommodate a third pod in the future, so that if the demand were there, you literally could build a new pod and add on. The base building, in terms of the laundry and the kitchen, it's sized such that we're making accommodations to be able to add additional washers, dryers, kitchen equipment as the inmate population goes up, so it's scaled up without having to replace the base infrastructure.
My name is Worth Grimshaw, and I just have a couple of short comments. Number one is I haven't heard anybody say anything at all about how long this jail's going to last. When the last one went in, 40 years ago, it was going to be the end all forever. Now it's 37 years old, it's the oldest thing in the state, it's decrepit. Most people don't have a house that's newer than that. But is this one in 35 years going to need to be replaced too? That's my first question, and I don't care whether you answer it, but I want you to think about it. My second question, or not a question, it's just a small statement, and this is to the commissioners that regarding what Mr. Blake said originally, that they were pushing the limits on the amount the county could keep. That's a really good time to give a tax decrease to the people and build a little political capital. Thank you.
Just very quickly, in terms of the lifespan of the jail, technology and the state of the art of corrections has changed significantly over the last 4 decades. And in terms of the way the individual cells work, the building is designed actually so that rather than burying a lot of this infrastructure that's buried in the current jail and a lot of jails of that vintage, it's in dedicated chases and shafts that are accessible by the maintenance staff, so that when you do need to replace piping, rooftop units, conduit, wiring, those sorts of things, it's easily accessible, it's not buried, you don't have to saw cut floors, you don't have to demolish walls. And so if the jail's properly maintained and taken care of, it will last quite a long time. I toured Sheriff Glover's jail a couple months ago, and it's now 12 years old, and I honestly was shocked what great condition it's in 12 years after the fact. So it is possible for these facilities to last 50, 60 years if they're properly designed and properly taken care of.
I just didn't stand up.
Okay, go ahead.
Went from line to go down.
Go ahead.
I'm Bill Pressgrove. I just had a couple of thoughts. Number one is if we can get the consumption tax passed, and we build the jail now, will the general obligation bond tax on our property go down? And number two, if it's not going to go down, then what is the difference in between what the jail would cost now versus what it would cost in a year when we get that sales tax approved? Those are just a couple of things that I think you need to look at and evaluate.
And I don't know, I have that same question, Bill, if we pass a geo bond, let's say for one pod jail or to whatever, and then if Representative Shipp gets this bill passed, I don't know that I want to be a commissioner if you want to raise taxes on another item. I'm top done. But so I don't know if that could augment the payment on a geo bond and make that payment quicker and retire that debt, and then it all goes away. I don't know. Do you know that, John? Can you start out with a geo bond and then add to it this sales tax increase to pay it off quicker and retire that debt?
Our municipal advisor, Marcus Keller, texted, and I don't understand his text. He said, yes, the county can dictate how much to levy with the geo bond if they use other funds to make the bond payment.
So yes, they could lower the geo bond.
They could.
So it could go, okay.
If we can show an offset, you might lower the geo bond. Hey, Dad. Dan Jessen made it.
Oh, about time you showed up, man.
But considering this is coming from our municipal advisor, then yes.
The other concern with the consumption tax, if Representative Shipp is successful in getting this bill passed through this next legislature, that's probably not going to go into effect for maybe another year after that.
2 years.
A year to 2 years. At that point, if we we as a commission, and we may not be in the commission at that point by the time that the consumption tax really becomes a reality. We would have to go through truth and taxation again, but the way that the bill is written, it would be mandatory that go on the ballot. So, I mean, realistically, if we're looking at a consumption tax, I mean, I'm going to say conservatively that that's 4 years out from this point if it gets passed in the legislature this year. It's not something that we can wait a year and then rely on that consumption tax. I would guess that if the stars all aligned, we wouldn't probably see those funds for at least 4 years from this point.
And just for reference, the current the yearly escalation of construction costs right now is about 6.5%. It used to be 4 to 5, and so 6.5% compounded every year adds up very.
Understood. But here's what I would like everybody here. I'm pretty sure that a lot of you, like me, would rather pay an extra nickel on $10 worth of goods than to pay $500 extra every year in my taxes. So I'm requesting that you get with anybody in this state that you know to have them support the bill that Rex Schiff is going to put up, so that their legislators will support it, so that we can have that in the future.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
And I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think it seems like maybe that's an option, is to do a GO bond and then augment it with this other later, if the taxpayers want to vote.
Commissioner Blake, I think to your question, this would have to go to a vote, but if we pass it in the next session, you can put it on the ballot next year. So if the community passed it, then I think it would be ready to
So
go.
the legislative session would be next fall, or this spring, this next spring.
Yeah, this
Spring of
next
2024.
Yeah,
And then it would
next
go on
session.
the ballot in 24.
And if it's passed, those bills always go into effect at 60 days after the session, so that would give you the opportunity to get it on the ballot for next year.
So it would be
2024. So then,
First part of 25.
far to 25, I think we'd be ready to go. So just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, thank you.
Well, I think we appreciate all the input tonight, and really appreciate everybody's been patient. I've got a lot of notes and a lot of thoughts. And, you want to go first? You want to
I'll go. This is an issue that, we've said before, hundreds and hundreds of hours, and not only, not in a silo, not in a vacuum. We've involved many people. I've had the opportunity to talk to, dozens, if not hundreds of constituents, and talk through this, and talk through the different scenarios. A couple of things here's my biggest concern. And this is a lesson that we learned early on, that I took to heart from Washington County, when we were touring the Washington County Jail with the commander. Their jail, and I don't know the first year that it was built. I don't remember what year it was built, but
They bought it, it was purgatory, it was a private jail, and then the county bought it from them, and I think it's 14 years old. Is that right?
And at that time, the commission voted to do the very minimum. The Washington County Jail has been under construction now for 12 of the last 14 years. They're just getting ready to add another 100 beds onto the back of it. In talking to their commander and talking to their group, said we wish that this would have been built for the future. We've literally been under construction for 12 years, been in turmoil for 12 years. Talking with the sheriff, we have an opportunity to build a jail that will give us the opportunity, and when people say a for-profit jail, that's just completely wrong. The opportunity to house inmates, both on a state and federal level, which is the proven model to pay for jails and to fund the ongoing operations, the ongoing costs of both jails, sheriff's offices. We have an opportunity to do that and be able to pay down our fund balance and add operating and maintenance costs in there that would negate the need for another truth in taxation or significant tax raise for the foreseeable future with a 2-pod jail. We build 1-pod jail. We're going to we're going to solve the needs, solve our current needs, and it'll be wonderful. The problem is that with a 1-pod jail, that 30-year bond payment is a 30-year bond payment with very little possibility of paying it off early or reducing that payment. With projections of growth and everything else, we may have to build that second pod in 10 years-ish, give or take. We don't have a crystal ball. At that point, we'll still have 20 years left on the original bond. Right now, we're looking at about $25 million additional dollars to add that second pod. I was talking with Ed Defner from Layton Construction the other day. I said, kind of give us a ballpark. We build the second pod now. Give us a ballpark of what that pod is going to cost us if we wait 1 year to build that second pod. And Ed said, I can confidently say that it's going to cost you $36 million next year. It'll cost $25 million now to stand alone, to remobilize the crew, come back in. It's going to cost you at least $36 million to, $11 million additional dollars to come back 1 year later. Construction costs don't go down. Commercial costs a lot of times level out. They don't drop significantly. If we don't build a 2-pod jail while we have the opportunity, what we're going to do is set the taxpayers in Iron County up for a major tax increase again in, I'm just going to say 10-ish years. Right now, the difference on this bond payment for a 1-pod to a 2-pod jail is $35 a year difference. We build 1 pod, and I don't remember the numbers, my friends probably, but we build 1 pod, this is our cost. We build 2 pods, it's going to cost us $35 a year more. $2.83 per month to give ourselves the opportunity to pay off the original bond, the opportunity to provide more jobs. Now, the beauty of this is with a bond payment, with a general obligation bond, that bond payment pays 100% of that project. We're not relying on bringing in inmates to make the payment. We're already able to make the payment. We can bring in inmates and bring on employees in a metered way. We're not reliant on filling that jail with 400 inmates in order to make the bond payment. That bond payment's already being made. Everything else allows us to retire that debt service much sooner than we do with 30 years. It's always a concern whether we can find employees, whether we can hire. The beauty of that is that can be based on inmates. As our inmate count grows, that's going to help fund those additional employees. This is a proven model. This is
You know, Sheriff Glover uses this model, Beaver County uses this model. We use this model in Iron County to pay off the original bond on our jail that we have now. That was done with federal inmate income, not on the backs of the taxpayers in the form of a bond or a tax increase. As I've talked to folks in the community, and I've talked to dozens, I've had this conversation and I've had zero pushback. Most people say, you know, I understand the return of investment. Please don't make a decision that saddles us with the potential for a 50 to 70% tax increase again in 10 years. I would rather pay $2.83 a month now for the future of our county rather than face a major tax increase. Truth in taxation sucks. Bonding sucks. I don't want to go through this again, ever. And I'm very confident that we can, following this model puts the county in a financial position for the foreseeable future, and I'm not going to throw a number on it. I can't say 30, 40, 50 years. I'm going to say for the foreseeable future, this puts the county in a position to be able to not only address the needs of public safety, which is number one, put the people in the jail that need to be in the jail. I'm frustrated as a current police officer when I arrest somebody and I go to jail and they're like, the inn is full, we can't take them. It's happened to me. It's happened to me a bunch of times. And it's frustrating. It's not the fault of the sheriff's office or anybody else. It's because of the facility that we have. We've got to be responsible and plan for the future, but most of all, we've got to be responsible to the taxpayers of Iron County to make decisions that put us in a position to not shift that tax burden onto our constituents. I love the idea of a consumption tax. If we can get it on the ballot next year, that's great. But that brings in about $3 million a year, $3.6 million a year, I believe is what that is. That's not even close to what it's going to cost to build a jail. I hope that we can do that, and that's a wonderful, you know, if we can take that extra $3.6 million and retire that bond early so that it drops off, perfect. That's the best thing, but a consumption tax just isn't going to pay the bill by itself. We don't have a choice. Well, and I guess the beauty of this is we need to make that decision tonight, whether it's going to be an extra $2.83 a month to the average taxpayer. And then the beauty of it is the taxpayers get to make the taxpayer gets to they get to make the decision. The voter gets to make the decision. I think fundamentally, this is the strongest avenue for us to be able to provide financial stability to the county for years to come, and it's not pie in the sky. It's not a pipe dream. It's literally the proven method that most entities in the state use to fund jails and to be able to drop off that general obligation bond in the end. I know that any bond that goes on the ballot, especially with the school district and everybody else, is an uphill battle. We may not get it. And you know what? It's our job as the commission and the county to educate our constituents that this is the need and this is the best way to do it. My favorite statement, Commissioner Cousins has said this before as we've talked in meetings. Since the last meeting 2 weeks ago, I had no idea who it was, got up to the microphone and said, hey, we trusted you. We trusted you when we put you in office. Please trust us to vote for the right thing. And I think that's the bottom line. Really, that's where I stand on the issue.
I agree with almost everything Commissioner Blake said. My fear in this whole process, and we've listened to a lot of input, is, and I've talked to a lot of people too, but I want something that's gonna pass. I don't wanna lose momentum. We have an architect hired, we have latent construction of the pre-construction agreement, and I want something, and I fear that a 2-pod jail, I fear that it will not pass the bond. I think our best shot is a 1-pod. I get it, it's only $3 more a month, but I fear that, I don't know, I mean, I wish we had everybody here that was here first. Just by a show of hands, whoever's left, who would favor a 1-pod jail over a 2? Raise your hand. Who would favor a 2-pod jail? What do you, another show of hands, who in here thinks that a bond will pass, a geo bond this year for a 2-pod jail? How many in here will think it'll pass?
If we get behind you,
How about a 1-pod jail? Any different? One of my big fears with this is staffing. Since I've been a commissioner, I'm in my 5th year, we've never had our jail fully staffed. It's really hard to find employees, and that's one thing that really worries me about doing a 2-pod jail. And it relieves me to know that it's going to be paid no matter what, and you can ramp up the employees as you bring in inmates. I want to vote for something that is that's going to pass. That we don't lose momentum. I'm tired of. I don't know that I can. I mean, Jeremy said, let's wait another year. I don't want to wait another year. If how many in here favor remodeling the old jail? Okay. I will not vote for that. Sorry, absolutely not. I've been in construction. I'm a cabinet maker. I started my business. I installed the cabinets in this jail when I was in college. Before I was married, I installed the cabinets in this jail. After I was married. And I've remodeled a lot of buildings in my life. I've remodeled schools, churches, homes. I've been in the construction business for 40 years. And I think it would be a horrible mistake. And I think it would be derelict of our duties to vote for remodeling the existing jail. It's just, it would not pay. You're putting lipstick on a pig, and then you still got a pig when you're done. It just doesn't pay. If any one of you guys called, I've sold my shop to my son. If any one of you guys called and said, I want new doors on my cabinets and freshen them up a little bit and make them look pretty from the outside, I'd tell you, no, I won't do it. I never have in 40 years. I've never said I would do that. Because you still got the old structure, you got the old bones. It's not worth it. I'd say save your money until you can do it right. There's just no way I would support that. You'll have to, you'll have to elect a new commissioner to do that. Our job as commissioners is to really look out 50 years in the future, to do what's right for the taxpayer. I had a couple of thoughts, and I'm sorry. One thing that's really been frustrating in this process is the school district gets 60% of the pie, we get 10%. And so I know the school district they're voting on a $75 million bond. They had 3 people show up to their hearing. And they build structure all the time, and I agree with that. We need to take care of our kids, but it's been frustrating to see the pushback we've had from the community. When this isn't soccer fields, this isn't gymnasiums, this is a need, this is a jail, this is something we have to provide, and it's something we have to have. I like the idea of possibly, if the public votes for a sales tax increase to go directly to a jail, to help, and we can do a bond, and then augment that and pay off that bond quicker. That's great. I think that'd be awesome to try to pay down that debt sooner. I look at the Washington County School District, or the Washington County, I mean not school district, but Washington County Commissioners, and the example Mike had with the purgatory jail, and what they started out with. They started out with, you know, I don't know how many beds they had when they started. 425. They started with that many as a private jail. Because they said they bought it from Purgatory's private, and they bought it. Yeah, okay. But like Commissioner Blake said, they've added on to that jail 12 out of the 14. They're adding 100 beds right now, and so I don't know. When we did the truth in taxation, it was a $186 increase per year on a $405,000 home. This, with the GEO bond, it comes down, what is it, 153? 153 and 119, that's the difference. And it's, you know, I came to this meeting, you guys, thinking I want to vote for a one-pot jail because it could maybe get passed easier. Because I want something to pass this year. I want to get started. I want to lose the momentum we've had. But as we look at the cost per month, $2, $3 a month, I think I've changed my mind.
Bill Murray.
And I've always wanted, since we've been talking about this return on investment, I've been a businessman all my life. And return on investment makes sense to me. I get it. And this makes sense, but I want something that's going to pass. And if you folks want a two-pod jail and it makes sense to you, which I think it does, I've always wanted that since I've been convinced. I came to this meeting thinking I'm going to vote for a one-pod jail because I think it'll pass easier. But I wish we could have taken a straw poll of everybody's here before everybody left. But based on that, I've changed my mind and I will support a two-pod and hope it passes. And I hope you folks can get the message out there that we have not doubled property taxes. We basically, and with the GEO bond, what is it, Luke? What is the increase? It's not 99% anymore, right? What is it? You know what the percentage is? Is it, I mean, we're talking 82%? So instead of a 99%, the two-pot is an 80, okay, it's an 82% increase. And so with that, I will entertain a motion. And this, now just to explain the process, this really wasn't intended to be a official public hearing. We held this meeting in the evening so people could give input. I think it's been very productive and I appreciate it very much. We all do. But the official public hearing for this GEO bond will be on October 9th. And I don't know what, did we set a time for that?
It will be 6 p.m.
6 p.m. October 9th?
Yes.
Where at? Should we do it here? Let's do it here.
It's already scheduled.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect. So it'll be in this room, October 9th, and we'll have a public hearing for that GEO bond. So, with that, you know, and back to the 50-year thing, I served on the Central Iron County Water Conservancy District Board for 2012 to 2019. And our charge in that water projects don't happen quickly. They take a long time. This has taken a long time. This is 10 years in the making. We've been working on this like Commissioner Blake. When I came in office, we started getting real serious about this. And it's a long process. I can't imagine waiting another year and putting this off. I just can't because I just can't. And it's our responsibility to look at what's best for the next 50 years. If Washington County would have built the two-pod facility we're looking at 14 years ago, they'd be in really good shape. The challenge they have now, and I like this concept because if we do a 1 or 2 or 3 pod, those pads are ready. They've got the conduit stub to them, so it's easy to pull wire, all the utilities, different things for those pods. But anyway, I just think this, as I've heard Commissioner Blake express this, and some texts I've received during the meeting and the vote here tonight with those that are left, I'll entertain
resolution providing for a special bond election to be held on November 21st, 2023, regarding the issuance of 89, I don't know, it's a scary number, an issuance of 89 million, I was going to say 89,000, but that's not it, 89,950,000 general obligation bonds to finance the cost of a new jail and related matters.
Second. It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
And for the record, it's I am absent since Commissioner Wood is gone.
Oh, yes. Okay, that's right. Yes.
Is Columbus Day gonna be a problem for October 9th?
We did talk about that, no.
Okay, yeah, just check.
And are we sure, John, there's no other meetings that's going to conflict?
So that requirement is for TNT, not for this process. I did verify that. It's also a Monday night. I actually haven't made notice of it, but we do have this building scheduled. If there is anything like that, we'll, because I've already asked our bond counsel once, we'll ask him again, just to make sure that there's no I's that aren't dotted or T's that aren't crossed.
We'll have a mailer going out with this process. We have an opportunity to send a mailer, an informational mailer out to everybody in the county, and we'll be doing that. Does that go out after the hearing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, there are rules about the for and against argument and rebuttals.